Chapter 58. After saying this, Yang Chendong took a sip from his teacup. His lips trembled a few times, giving off the impression that he was extremely distressed. If there really was an investment of 300,000 taels, giving away 10% of the profits for free was truly not a small sum. Roughly estimating, he would receive at least 3,000 taels of silver every month. This allowed Wang Zhen to understand Yang Chendong's boldness. Then what do you need this eunuch to do? Wang Zhen didn't believe that a free lunch would fall from the heavens. If there were no benefits for the other party, even if it was a temporary alliance, it wouldn't last long. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. What I need is safety. I need Eunuch Wang to ensure that the Immortal Abode and World Heaven Trading Company are absolutely safe. At the very least, no one can cause trouble here. In addition, the bulk of the goods are coming from the barbarians, and I have already ordered them to be shipped to the nearest Tientsin Guard. This way, the journey from there to the capital will be safe. I hope that Eunuch Wang can guarantee it. Of course, the brothers will also pay for the tea. Yang Chendong was waiting for Wang Zhen to ask him this question. One had to get something in return. This was just a transaction. With Yang Chendong's current strength, once he revealed his fangs, it wouldn't be difficult to ensure his safety. However, these were his private soldiers, and he couldn't reveal them to others, at least not yet. Wang Zhen listened to Yang Chendong's request and pondered for a moment. He felt that this was not a difficult matter. He only needed to inform the Eastern Faction guards and the Brocade guards so that no one would cause trouble. This way, he would be able to earn at least 3,000 taels of silver a month, which would be 30 to 40,000 taels of silver a year. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Okay, it's a deal. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. Come, this lowly official will use tea in place of wine to toast you. Yang Chendong laughed in satisfaction. Good. Wang Zhen seemed to be in a good mood. In his eyes, Yang Chendong was a god of wealth. Being on good terms with him was a matter of mutual benefit, so he was naturally happy. And from start to finish, Yang Chendong didn't show any intention of raising his rank. He just acted like a merchant, and this made Wang Zhen feel even more at ease. Wang Zhen liked power and money. But of course, the thing he loved the most was still power. In this aspect, Yang Chendong did not have the slightest intention to compete with him. There were only benefits and no disputes, so Wang Zhen could naturally rest assured. Satisfied, Wang Zhen left. Yang Chendong looked at Xiao Yin, who came to clean up the table, and said, "Go, throw away that set of teacups." Pointing at the teacups that Wang Zhen had used, the sixth young master's face was filled with disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was still too weak and he didn't want the people of the Great Ming dynasty to suffer because of him, Yang Chendong wouldn't have done such a thing so casually. Yes, Xiao Yin replied obediently. Then, she pursed her lips and smiled. Clearly, she found the sixth young master's pettiness funny. Oh, you've grown up. You actually dare to laugh at this young master. Since that's the case, are you ready to be spanked? He noticed Xiao Yin's gentle laughter. More importantly, she was laughing beautifully towards the end. Her entire body was trembling, causing her towering breasts to tremble as well. It was a powerful visual impact, and Yang Chendong couldn't help but feel his hands itch. He wanted to punish her using her parents. The so-called family law, which was what Yang Chendong said himself, was to spank her. Ever since he accidentally spanked Xiao Yin's but while playing around, Yang Chendong liked the feeling of being fleshy. Xiao Yin didn't seem to be annoyed, and she even provoked the sixth young master for no reason. In this way, domestic discipline became popular. One was willing to be spanked, and the other was willing to be spanked. It was truly amusing. At this moment, Yang Chendong wanted to use domestic discipline again. To put it bluntly, it was because his hands itched. When she heard about domestic discipline, Xiao Yin's pretty face turned red. While she was delighted, she still said, "Young master, don't." Xiao Yin knows she was wrong. Do you know? It's too late now, ha ha ha. As he spoke, Yang Chendong walked closer with a big grin on his face like a big bad wolf. Little White Rabbit didn't seem to have any intention of running away. Instead, she stood there foolishly, as if she was at his mercy. Her intention of asking for a spanking couldn't be more obvious. Yang Chendong knew that he could once again satisfy his touch, and a mischievous smile appeared on his face. However, all of this was lost as Tiger's Mane suddenly appeared. Tiger's Mane also knew that this wasn't the right time to appear, but he had no choice. Outside the Yang Manor, the young master, the second young master, and the rest of the Yang family had all arrived. They wanted to see the sixth young master. These were all direct descendants of the Yang family. Tiger's Mane didn't dare to stop them. What's wrong? Seeing Tiger's Mane appear, Yang Chendong immediately regained his calm expression. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he looked like a completely different person from when he was fooling around with Xiao Yin. Young master, the second young master, and the other young masters and young miss have all arrived. They are currently outside the manor. The people from the East faction guards have stopped them. Tiger's Mane lowered his head. As Yang Chendong's radiance grew brighter and brighter, his respect and reverence for the sixth young master grew with each passing day. Tiger's Mane no longer spoke as casually as before. Big Brother and the others are finally willing to come? Yang Chendong let out a light snort. They were all blood-related brothers, and they were all snobbish. Yesterday, he was only a 9th rank official, and they all said that they were too busy to show up. Now that he was a 5th rank official, he was even higher than them. They immediately came over. This was the reality of society. Although he was somewhat displeased, Yang Chendong still decided to meet them. After all, they were still his family. Since he had taken over Yang Chendong's body, he naturally wanted to return some benefits. This way, he would be able to face the world calmly after 100 years. Alright, tell the people from the East faction guards that this is the young master's elder brother and elder sister. They are not to stop them. Yes. Tiger's Mane respectfully replied and turned to leave. Xiao Yin immediately went to the main hall and began to clean up the tables and chairs. Outside the Yang family manor, Yang Gong, Yang Rang, Yang Shi, Yang Yang, Yang Guifang, and the 5 brothers of the Yang family had all arrived. Standing at the side were 3rd sister Yang Jing, 4th sister Yang Mei, 5th sister Yang Li, and 6th sister Yang Qin. Aside from eldest sister Yang Fei and 7th sister Yang Duo, all of his family members were present. At this moment, everyone was standing outside the Yang manor. Seeing the people from the East faction guards blocking their way, they did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. They only glanced at the manor from time to time, expressing their eagerness to see 6th brother. Finally, amidst their anticipation, Tiger's Mane, dressed as a study companion, appeared. As soon as he approached, he said to the head of the East faction guards in charge of security, "These are the 6th young master's elder brother and elder sister. Please let them in." With the Yang manor's permission, the East faction guards let them in. Only then did Yang Gong and the others have the opportunity to enter the manor. Once they were free from the East faction guard surveillance, the Yang brothers' expressions became somewhat arrogant, especially second brother Yang Rang. He said with an unhappy expression, "You must be Tiger's Mane. What is little 6th brother busy with? We are all here. Does he not know how to come out and welcome us? Why did he send a servant like you?" As the head of the Ministry of Rights and a 6th rank official, Yang Rang's authority was growing by the day. When he met Yang Gong, it was inevitable that he would argue with him, let alone a servant like Tiger's Mane. Tiger's Mane did not say anything. In his eyes, there was only one master, and that was Yang Chendong, the 6th young master. As for the others, he would not pay attention to them. He did not interact much with them to avoid unnecessary suspicion. After complaining, he did not receive any response. At this moment, he just happened to walk to the front of the Yang manor's main entrance. Yang Rang felt a little embarrassed and said somewhat angrily, "Tiger's Mane, this official is talking to you. Do you hear me? You don't have any manners. Just stand there. You can leave when you know you're wrong." In his anger, Yang Rang treated this place as his own home. He scolded Tiger's Mane and the others without any psychological pressure. Tiger's Mane's footsteps became hesitant after being scolded like this. Then, he remembered that Yang Rang was the second brother of the sixth young master. In the end, he stopped in his tracks and stood there without moving. He really looked like he was going to admit his mistake. The people guarding the main entrance of the Yang Manor were Yang Wu and Yang Lu. When they saw Tiger's Mane being stopped, the two of them looked at each other. Then, Yang Wu quietly disappeared, leaving Yang Lu standing there alone to keep watch. Second brother, sixth brother has been busy all day and is very tired. Besides, we are family. It is understandable that he did not come out to welcome us. There is no need to be so serious. Sixth sister, Yang Qin, who had always been disliked by others, saw that Yang Rang was taking advantage of the situation again. She immediately spoke with displeasure. What? You say that I am serious? Sixth sister, who do you think you are? You are the only one in our family who married a businessman. Do you know how much face you have brought to our ancestors? Now, you still have the face to speak here? Yang Rang was well educated and worked in the Ministry of Rights. His language skills were not to be underestimated. With just one sentence, he forced Yang Qin to be at a loss. Then, tears formed in her eyes and she looked like she was about to cry. Second brother, we are all family. Why do you have to speak to sixth sister like this? Eldest brother, Yang Gong, could not stand it anymore and wanted to mediate. Eldest brother, it is not that I want to criticize you, but your temper is too good. That is why our Yang family is not what it used to be. If you ask me, sometimes you have to take care of people. Otherwise, without rules, there will be no order or propriety. At that time, we will only be bullied. Yang Rang didn't care about his elder brother Yang Gong at all. In his eyes, his big brother was born well. He was the eldest son of the Yang family. That was why he was a sixth-rank official. If it was him, he would be at least a fifth-rank official. Well said. A voice suddenly sounded from within the manor. Yang Chendong, who was dressed in green, strode out. Second brother is right. Without rules, there will be no order or decorum. Otherwise, we will only be bullied. But sixth brother wants to ask, previously when third sister, fourth sister, and seventh sister were bullied, dare I ask, what were you doing? Chapter 59. It was a slap in the face. Yang Chendong had just stepped forward when he gave the men of the Yang family a slap in the face. His interrogative expression made the Yang brothers' faces turn red. The fourth brother, Yang Yang, had his head lowered. Just yesterday, he was still doubting Yang Chendong for not being able to control seventh sister. But they had gone to beat Wang Go early in the morning, and had even given his outrageous mother, Lady Yen, a horsewhip. Yet nothing had happened to him until now. Yang Chendong had used his actions to show his determination to protect the rights of the Yang family. In contrast, as the fourth brother, not only did he not support him, he even doubted him. Now that he thought about it, it really made him blush with shame. Not only the fourth brother, but even the eldest brother, third brother, and fifth brother's faces were flushed red. They clearly knew that they were in the wrong in this matter and could not refute anything. However, only the second son, Yang Rang, said with an indifferent expression, Lil, 6, you're wrong. Married women are like spilled water. Since they're already married, they're no longer part of the Yang family. What does it have to do with us whether their life is good or bad? Nonsense. With a furious shout, Yang Chendong was really angry this time. His shout shocked the crowd. At the same time, they were also unable to comprehend his shout. Yang Chendong had become a county official at the age of 13 and was now personally bestowed the status of a high scholar by the emperor. How could someone with such a status speak such filthy words? All the brothers and sisters could not understand. Only Qiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, and the other Yang family servants had a matter-of-fact expression. Their master should be like this. When he should be rewarded, when he should be punished, when he should be happy, when he should be scolded, when he should be scolded, he should be scolded. The scene quieted down, but after 2 breaths of time, Yang Rang, whose face was already filled with anger, suddenly jumped up and roared at Yang Chendong, "Little sixth, what did you just say? You dare to be so disrespectful to your second brother, do you know that you should be beaten?" As he shouted, Yang Rang really rushed towards the place where Yang Chendong was standing. However, Tiger's man, Yang Wu, and Yang Lu had already formed a human wall in front of Yang Rang, making it impossible for him to get close to the 6th young master. Unable to rush forward, Yang Rang could not vent the anger in his heart. Instead, he bared his fangs and brandished his claws at the 3 young family guards. In just a few moments, his clothes were torn open, making him look like a village woman throwing a tantrum in a fight. "Enough, the 3 of you step aside. I want to see how this young master's second brother will attack an official of the imperial court." "Oh, right." Yang Chendong shouted angrily when he saw how flustered and exasperated second Yang was. What's more, he's a court official who's 1 level higher than him. Once an order was given, it had to be carried out. After Tiger's man and the other 2 heard this, they dodged to the side. Yang Rang, who was not prepared at all, missed and fell to the ground with a thud, making intimate contact with the ground. Pfft! The Yang family's sisters finally could not hold it in anymore and covered their mouths as they chuckled. After being laughed at, Yang Rang felt humiliated. He quickly got up and wanted to rush towards Yang Chendong. Yang Chendong had long seen through Yang Rang's appearance of strength. He sneered, "Come on, try and hit me. Let's see if the East faction guards outside will arrest you and send you to the Imperial Edict." Yang Rang, who was about to make a move, immediately collapsed like a deflated ball when he heard about the East faction guards and the Imperial Edict. He stood there, not knowing whether he should move or not. Okay, we're all brothers. It was just a joke. Let's forget about it." At this time, Yang Gong began to stand up and play the good guy again. Yang Gong's personality was like this. Even though he saw his second brother suffer, he was still very happy. However, he did not forget his father's words before his death, that the Yang family should be united. As the eldest brother, all he could do was follow his father's orders. Everyone was used to their eldest brother's living mud, so naturally, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with his words. However, Yang Chendong was not used to it. He shook his head and said, "No. This young master is not joking. I'm asking you. 3rd sister, 4th sister, and 7th sister suffered in the in-laws' house. Why didn't you do anything about it? Is it really like what second brother said, that a married girl is like water that has been poured out? Is there really no need to ask about it? If that's the case, why do they still have the surname Yang? Is the affection that we grew up with gone? This is clearly a sign of cold-bloodedness and incompetence. If that's the case, now that we have separated from each other, there is no need for us to interact with each other or help each other." Yang Chendong took the opportunity to express his own opinion. If it was yesterday, Yang Chendong dared to say this, his brothers would definitely have reprimanded him, saying that it was easy for him to speak while standing. However, after what happened in the Wang family this morning, no one dared to say this. They already knew that their 6th brother was a man of his words. In comparison, they were indeed much more incompetent. At this moment, all they could do was to lower their heads. Even the second brother, Yang Rang, calmed down a lot. He thought about how Yang Chendong beat up Wang Go in the morning. He thought about how this person was greatly favored by the emperor, and was even a secondary class 5th rank official, 1 rank higher than him. He thought that the current little 6 could no longer be treated as a younger brother. No one spoke. Only 3rd sister, Yang Jing, and 4th sister, Yang Mei, stood there crying quietly. Just before this morning, they were still living in their in-laws' house, where each day felt like a year. However, when Wang Go's matter came out, their situation changed. Especially when their in-laws sent people to investigate. They learned that Wang Go and his mother, Madame Yan, were beaten because they were not good to Yang Chendong's 7th sister, Yang Duo. Instantly, they became concerned about their madams. When they learned that their madam wanted to go to the Yang family village to see their sixth brother, no one dared to stop her. They immediately agreed. This was the general trend. Yang Chendong beat Wang Go and his mother. Not only he did not receive any punishment from the emperor, on the contrary, he was promoted to the 7th level. None of the civil and military officials in the imperial court said anything bad about Yang Chendong. On the contrary, they took a lot of potatoes home. After receiving benefits, they said that Wang Go was too harsh on Yang Duo and deserved to be beaten. Once these rumors spread, who would dare to be dissatisfied with the Yang family? Not to mention deliberately causing trouble, it was already good enough that no one came looking for trouble. As a result, third sister, Yang Jing, and fourth sister, Yang Mei, finally had the chance to leave their in-laws' house and come to the Yang family village to meet with their brothers and sisters. And all of this was thanks to their sixth brother, Yang Chendong, who had just come to the capital. If not for him, who knew what kind of suffering they would have had to endure? Yang Chendong couldn't bear to see his two sisters crying, so he signaled to Qiao Yin with his eyes. Qiao Yin immediately walked over and helped third sister and fourth sister into the central room with fifth sister, sixth sister, Yang Qin. After the four sisters entered the central room, Yang Chendong looked at his 5 brothers and said, "Let's go. If there's anything you want to say, we can talk inside." Turning around, Yang Chendong led the way in. Behind him was eldest brother, Yang Gong, and the others. Last was second brother, Yang Rang, whose face was pale. Although he hated his sixth brother for not giving him face, he wanted to know what had happened in the Yang family village. As a 6th-rank official, it was necessary for him to know what was going on in the court. In the central room, everyone was seated according to their size. But it was worth mentioning that the one sitting at the head was Yang Chendong, not eldest brother, Yang Gong. It was true that this was the Yang family village, but it was built by Yang Chendong. He was the owner, so it was appropriate for him to sit at the head of the table. Everyone seemed to have some doubts about this, but because of Yang Chendong's display of strength, they tactfully didn't ask anything, but their gazes were clearly pressing. There were some things that Yang Chendong didn't want to be so clear about, but since his brothers had objections, he had to say them. "Brothers, there is one thing that sixth brother needs to clarify first. Although this Yang family village is called the Yang family village, it is different from the Yang family village in Jianghu Prefecture. That Yang family village is jointly owned by us brothers, but the one below us is sixth brothers. The Yang family village in the capital had 2,000 mu of fertile land. And it wasn't far from the capital, so its value could be imagined." Now that they heard that Yang Chendong had taken it for himself, the 5 brothers' expressions immediately changed. But before they could ask anything, Yang Chendong continued, "Sixth brother knows what you brothers are thinking, but I must say that all of the investment in this Yang family village is six brothers alone, spending a total of 2,000 taels of gold. This is all from my partnership with cousin Yang Fu, the restaurant in Jianghu Prefecture, and the newspaper Yang Bao. Not only that, sixth brother will also be opening an immortal abode restaurant and a trading company in the capital. These 2 projects should cost at least 300,000 taels of silver. These matters have already been reported to His Majesty today, and eunuch Wang Zhen and cousin Yang Fu also have 10% of the shares." He wouldn't rest until his words shocked everyone to death. Yang Chendong laid out his plans for the future. Since they were interested in a mere Yang family village, if he didn't make things clear beforehand, all sorts of trouble would come knocking on his door in the future. As for eunuch Wang Zhen's shares, they probably wouldn't dare to casually reveal such a big matter. Originally, when Yang Chendong said that the Yang manor had nothing to do with the brothers, they wanted to object. They also wanted to ask where the money to buy the manor came from if it had nothing to do with them. But when they heard that Yang Chendong had invested 300,000 taels in a restaurant and a trading company, they were so frightened that they didn't know what to say. If he could take out 300,000 taels of silver so easily, then this little Yang family village really didn't count for much. Not to mention, he had such a close relationship with Wang Zhen. From the looks of it, anyone who wanted to cause trouble for him was courting death. Yang Chendong saw the expressions on his brothers' faces change again and again, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of satisfaction in his heart. He had purposely brought up Wang Zhen's name in order to frighten them, and it seemed that it had been quite effective. Chapter 60. The central room fell into silence because of Yang Chendong's words. After a long while, Yang Gong, the eldest brother, asked in an uncertain tone, "Can Yang Bao and a restaurant really make that much money?" Yang Chendong obviously wouldn't say that most of the money was stolen by Gao Xiong and the others from the sea. Thus, he could only nod. Every time Yang Bao publishes, the demand exceeds the supply. Naturally, it makes money. That's right, Wang Zhen also has 20% of the shares. Hearing that even Yang Bao had a share of Wang Zhen's shares, the brothers didn't ask any more questions. That was an existence they couldn't afford to offend. If they took a detour, they wouldn't be afraid of not being able to avoid it. Not to mention taking the initiative to provoke it. Seeing that everyone was silent, Yang Chendong continued, "As for Jianghu Mansion's young village, we'll still follow mother's instructions when she left. The profits there will be divided into 6 parts, one for us 6 brothers. However, that village isn't very big, and the amount of money we can earn in a year is limited. It's not very possible to make a fortune from that. Since 6th brother already has the Yang village in the capital, we don't need the shares there. Let the 5 brothers divide it." Yang Chendong said magnanimously. After deducting all kinds of expenses, the annual profit of the Yang family manor in Jianghu Prefecture was only between 1,000 and 2,000 taels of silver. If the 5 brothers were to share it equally, each of them would only get 300 to 400 taels of silver. This amount of money was really not enough for him at the moment. After discussing the ownership of the village, Yang Chendong's gaze fell on the 4 sisters. "The Yang village in Jianghu Mansion has nothing to do with you sisters. You rely on the dowry to survive in your in-laws' family. Without income, even a mountain of gold and silver will be emptied. This won't do." Shaking his head, Yang Chendong knew the importance of money. People said that money could make the devil push the millstone. There were even people who said that money could make the millstone push the devil. From this, it could be seen how important money was. The reason why the elder sister's status in their in-laws' family was declining day by day, other than the Yang family's weak power, it was also because they didn't have enough money. They were unable to establish their own power and consolidate their position. If he wanted to change it, it would be difficult to solve the problem by just beating him up. There might be a reason this time, but what about the next time? Yang Chendong couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be held accountable every time he hit someone. Therefore, he thought of a way to solve the problem once and for all, and that was to pay. With enough money to rely on, no one would dare to look down on them anymore. 3rd elder sister, 4th elder sister, 5th elder sister and 6th elder sister, in the future, I'll give each of you a monthly allowance. I'll give each of you 1,000 taels of silver first. If you have any other urgent matters, feel free to tell me and I'll find a way to solve it. Also, it's the same for eldest sister and 7th sister. You can help me inform them later." Yang Chendong looked at the 4 sisters with a smile. "Of course, if you feel that your life isn't going your way and want to leave your current in-laws, you can also say so. If others don't want to make the decision, I'll make the decision. If others don't want to care, I'll care. If necessary, I can even ask His Majesty to make the decision for you. When the time comes and you're divorced, you can find another one that suits your heart. It's not easy to find a 3-legged toad, but there are plenty of 2-legged men." Yang Chendong habitually said some of the language of the later generations. When he said this, the girls immediately burst into laughter. Then 3rd elder sister, Yang Jing, who wasn't living well, pursed her lips and said, 6th younger brother is joking again. 3rd elder sister is now over 30 years old and has 2 children. How can she divorce and get married? There's nothing impossible about it. Everyone has the right to pursue their own happiness. There are men, there are women. In short, if you're not satisfied with your life, you can come find me. I'll make the decision for you." Yang Chendong shook his head. He really wanted to refute his 3rd elder sister's way of thinking. He wanted to say that in his era, there were many women in their 40s and 50s who divorced. But in the end, he didn't say it. After all, it was better to tear down 10 temples than to tear down a single marriage. This was a way of thinking that had existed since ancient times and couldn't be changed in a short period of time. When he said this, his 4 sisters, including Xiao Yin, couldn't help but shed tears. In this era, it really wasn't easy to find a man who understood women so well. Especially Xiao Yin, who was proud of being able to follow by the 6th young master's side. The 4 sisters were very happy. They could get a monthly allowance of 1,000 taels of silver. With this money, they could do whatever they wanted in their in-laws' house. It was all their own money, so they could use it to uphold justice. They could also use it to rope in more people. Presumably, their future days would be filled with anticipation. In contrast, the 5 brothers' expressions were much more unsightly. How did this sound like something their 6th younger brother would say? Yang Chendong was clearly the eldest brother. Not only did he sound like the eldest brother, but Yang Chendong was also very strong-willed. When it came to money, the 5 of them added together couldn't even compare to his pinky finger. Ever since their parents passed away, their source of income had practically been cut off. Apart from a few hundred taels of silver from the Yang clan manor and the Yang clan's old residence, the rest was their official salary. Of course, it wasn't a problem for a small family to have that money. But for the 5 brothers, which one of them didn't have a wife and concubines? There were dozens of people in the family, so how could they use the money? Comparing official positions? Yesterday, they could use this to suppress Yang Chendong. But now, the other party was a minor 5th-rank official, while the best among them was a major 6th-rank official. They still couldn't suppress him. Like this, what else could they use to talk to their 6th younger brother? Unable to make sense of things, they immediately felt bored and uninterested. Take 2nd brother Yang Rang for example. At this moment, he wanted to get up and leave. But if not for the fact that he still hadn't figured out the reason for the change in the Yang clan manor and why there were so many East faction guards outside, he would have already gotten up and left. Little 6th younger brother, what's going on today? Even the emperor came to the Yang clan manor, and so many civil and military officials? Yang Rang saw that if he didn't ask, Yang Chendong wouldn't tell him. So he couldn't help but ask. Nothing big. This wasn't a secret, and he believed that it would soon spread to all the streets of the capital. Since that was the case, it didn't matter to tell his brothers. Immediately, Yang Chendong roughly told them the whole story. When he said that the potatoes they planted could produce more than 20 dan per mu, the 5 brothers were shocked again. At this moment, they finally understood why their 6th younger brother suddenly turned over a new leaf. He was promoted and had nothing to do with an official position. They finally understood what was going on. Yang Rang felt that there was no need to stay. Why did he feel that staying would be a slap in the face? So he got up and said goodbye. When Yang Rang said that he wanted to leave, eldest brother Yang Gong also said that, followed by 3rd brother, 4th brother, and 5th brother. They knew that their words today had hurt their brothers. If they stayed now, their faces would only be ugly. Since that was the case, it was better to go their separate ways first. They could slowly make up for it in the future. Alright, before you leave, each of you can bring back 10 jin of potatoes to try. I'm already in the capital, and there will be many opportunities for us to get along in the future. This time won't make a difference. Right, 4th brother, stay. I have something to discuss with you. Being called out, 4th brother Yang was stunned at first. Then, he said happily, okay. I don't have anything to do when I go back, so I'll stay here and disturb 6th brother. The other eldest brother, 2nd brother, 3rd brother, and 5th brother looked at 4th brother Yang enviously. Then, led by Tiger's Mane and the others, they took the potatoes and left the manor. 4th brother Yang asked excitedly and curiously, 6th brother, why are you looking for 4th brother? It's like this. After dinner tonight, take me to the red light district in the capital to take a look. Yang Chendong said casually. The red light district. It referred to the red light district. It was usually a place where people sought pleasure. In other words, it was a brothel. Of course, there were also high-class places in the red light district. Those places sold their skills and not their bodies. They were specially provided for talented women to live there. For example, Qin Yuanyuan in the late Ming dynasty was a courtesan. She was once a courtesan. The reason why he kept fourth brother was because he knew that this brother of his was a hedonistic son. He was an official and did not have a proper job. Furthermore, he was a man in the prime of his life. He should be familiar with such places. As expected, when fourth brother Yang heard that he wanted to take a look at the red light district, he immediately revealed an understanding look. Then, he smiled slyly, "That's right. Sixth brother is already 18 years old. You're probably still a virgin. You should go and take a look." Yang Qindong did not know what to say to fourth brother's explicit words. He could only shake his head and ignore him. Instead, he ran over to talk to his sisters. The four sisters had also heard the conversation between Yang Qindong and fourth brother Yang. When they saw the sixth young master running over, they naturally smiled. Xiao Yin stood to the side with a face full of resentment. She seemed to be saying that if the young master needed anything, he should have just come to her. Why did he have to go to such a place? That would not have a good reputation. Looking at everyone's eyes, he knew that they had misunderstood him. Yang Qindong had no choice but to spread out his hands and explain, "Sisters, sixth brother is not that bad. This time, I have a purpose. You know that I want to build a restaurant. How can a big restaurant not have singing and dancing? I'm going to look for talents." "So it's like that," Yang Qindong said with a deadpan expression. Putting aside whether or not the sisters really believed him, Xiao Yin was the first to believe him. Xiao Yin was the first person to believe him, because if the young master really needed help, he would definitely look for her and not go to the red light district to cause trouble. After explaining, Yang Qindong did not mention this matter again. Instead, he asked the sisters about some anecdotes in the capital. Because Yang Qindong had helped them vent their anger and even gave them money, the four elder sisters felt that their relationship with each other had become closer in an instant. This time, there was really nothing that they didn't talk about. As their relationship grew closer, Yang Qindong suddenly had an idea. He had Xiao Yin go to the warehouse in the rear courtyard and take out some women's bras, panties, and kipeos for the sisters to change into. Chapter 61. During the Ming dynasty, the ancient customs were not extremely strict. At least, they did not issue a no-exposure order like the Tang Gaozong. They also liked to wear skirts, and there were many patterns, such as the moonlight skirt, phoenix tail skirt, acacia skirt, and pleated skirt made of whole satin. This kind of skirt was flat in the front and had decorative lace around it. The inside was filled with colorful embroidery patterns, and the left and right sides had fine pleats. The most was 150 to 160 pleats. However, they were still not used to clothes like the qipao that exposed the calves. Compared to the thin, revealing skin of modern women, it was impossible to catch up. For this reason, Yang Qindong could be said to have persuaded a lot. It was like a woman's beauty was for others to see. Women were magical creatures in the hands of the Creator, and beauty was their nature. Since that was the case, why not find a way to show it? Wrap it up every day and admire yourself? A woman's true youth was only so many years, and it would pass in a blink of an eye. If they did not cherish it, they would be letting themselves down. Moreover, such a qipao could show a woman's perfect figure. Women who wore qipao generally had to be dignified. They had to stand straight, stick out their chest, and tuck in their stomach. They had to walk steadily, as if they were strolling in the courtyard. When they sat, they had to be upright and not hunched. After a long time, they would all become young ladies of noble families. The advantage was that it could also improve one's personality. Wearing an elegant and beautiful qipao, a woman's heart would be affected, and she would become more demure, elegant, and feminine. Women who were in a hurry or who did not stand properly with 4 legs were not suitable to wear a qipao. Wearing a qipao could also show that they had good nutrition. This was because women who wore qipao needed to have lustrous skin, white with rosy skin, a voluptuous and graceful figure, and delicate skin. Wearing a qipao like this, the clothes fit perfectly and were flawless. If one was sallow and skinny, they would not be able to wear a qipao no matter how good it was. At the same time, the rate of turning heads was high. A gentleman was used for those who understood him, and a woman was dressed up for those who liked her. Wearing a qipao would naturally attract countless eyes of the opposite sex. Who knew, it might even be a marriage decision. In short, the qipao was the clothes that could show the curvaceous beauty of Eastern women. After saying so much, the 4 sisters were somewhat moved, but no one tried it first. In the end, Yang Qindong had no choice but to use his trump card. She said that this was a tool to make money, and in the end, it would be paraded throughout the capital. If the 4 big sisters refused to wear it, how would others know of its benefits? If they couldn't sell it, wouldn't they suffer a loss? How would they be able to pay their monthly allowance? Of course, Yang Hodong just wanted to use this opportunity to help his 4 sisters regain their confidence. If he really wanted to promote it, he could get other open-minded women to wear it. It wouldn't be difficult to get a model team. That way, the effect would be better. Not to mention, once the immortal abode caught fire, the qipao would catch fire as well. He was extremely confident about this. Sure enough, when it came to money, the 4 sisters finally made up their minds. 6th brother had helped them so much, if he was not even willing to pay this small price, it would be too unreasonable. Thus, the 4 sisters, including Xiao Yin, entered the fitting room with red faces and changed into qipaos. Yang Qindong and 4th brother Yang Yang sat in the main hall, sipping tea as they waited to be the first audience. After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, the 5 women finally appeared in the main hall. When they walked out, because it was their first time wearing it, they were naturally a little embarrassed, even a little bashful. However, they didn't know that this made them look even more charming. At least, that was how Yang Qindong saw it. Yang Yang, on the other hand, was staring at them with wide eyes, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. It was hard to tell if it was tea leaves or something else. In any case, after the 5 women changed into qipaos, their auras completely changed. They gave off a completely different feeling, as if they were fairies that had descended to the mortal world. 6th brother, there should be more of these things, right? Give me a few. I'll have your sisters-in-law wear them when we get home. They'll definitely be beautiful. Yang Yang, who reacted, didn't bother to wipe the saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. He grabbed Yang Qindong's arm and said anxiously. Yang Qindong, who was being grabbed, hurriedly nodded. Okay, I'll give one to each sister-in-law as a greeting gift. Only then did Yang Yang stop, satisfied. The 4 sisters also had a shy look on their faces. When they wore the qipaos, it gave them a feeling as if they had returned to their youth, so beautiful and bright. Of course, whether or not they had truly returned to their youth was another matter. At least in terms of mentality, they had returned to their youth. For a moment, the 5 women were unwilling to take off their qipaos. Moreover, their faces were bright and full of smiles. It was unknown how long it had been since such a smile had appeared on their faces. Like the 4 sisters, Hu Yan also had a smile on her face. Grandfather and father returned to the mansion at noon and were all smiling. Then, the housekeeper came to inform them that the whole family was having a meal tonight. A meal gathering. This kind of thing was common in large clans, but there were basically rules and regulations. For example, it would only appear during major festivals and happy events such as the New Year. But today was not the New Year, nor was it a festival, but they were having a meal together. This could only mean one thing, that something good had happened. Curiosity was human nature, especially for women. Hu Yan asked little Qing to inquire about it and gave half a tael of silver. The same was true for large families. If they wanted to win people's hearts and make more people like you until they were used by you, they had to give benefits. The servants had to live and they had to live. How could they do without money? With half a tael of silver, he quickly found out the whole story from one of Hu Xiangning's personal attendants. It turned out that what Hu Xiangning did today made the emperor happy, and he was rewarded with a spring-embroidered saber. This saber was not an imperial sword, but it still showed how much the emperor valued Hu Xiangning. With a good impression, it would be natural for Hu Xiangning to be promoted in the future. And the reason for the saber was naturally related to Yang Qindong. When the maid Little Qing said that it was all because the sixth young master of the Yang clan had sounded the drum, Miss Hu Yan realized that the talent she had been hiding in her heart had actually arrived in the capital. Most importantly, Little Qing also found out that it was the sixth young master who had presented the auspicious item today. It was actually a grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain per mu. This could solve the problem of the common people's stomachs. On the spot, he was conferred the title of the Crown Prince's Chamberlain, a minor fifth-rank official. Miss, the sixth young master of the Yang clan is only 18 years old, but he is already a minor fifth-rank official. This kind of thing seems to only happen during the founding of the country. TSK. This sixth young master is truly formidable. Little Qing really wants to meet this person. Seeing the infatuated look on Little Qing's face, Hu Yan pursed her lips and smiled. What's wrong? Is Little Qing in love again? Then do you want me to be your matchmaker and talk to him? She originally wanted to tease Little Qing, but who would have thought that Little Qing would agree without blushing? Okay, Little Qing will be the matchmaker. When the time comes, Little Qing will be able to marry you. Ah. What? How could Hu Yan be willing to let the matter go when she heard that the topic had turned to her? The two of them immediately broke out into laughter. After a while, when the two of them had enough fun, Little Qing caught her breath and said, Miss, you don't know? This sixth young master is not only talented, but also sincere. What do you mean sincere? You haven't even met him, so how can you come to such a conclusion? Hu Yan shook her head in disbelief. She only thought that Little Qing thought that everything about Yang Qindong was good because of her admiration. But the facts proved that there were many people fishing for fame. Often, the people on the street would say how good the person was, but only when they really came into contact with the person would they know that the person was nothing more than a beast in human clothing. The good points were deliberately shown and could not stand the test of time. No, miss, is this sixth young master's true temperament? You don't know, but just this morning, he went to the vicinity of Lulikang and beat up his seventh brother-in-law. Little Qing remembered that when she heard the attendant talk about this matter, she couldn't help but have a happy expression on her face. In her mind, she imagined what kind of demeanor Yang Qindong would have when doing these things. Hu Yan originally thought that Little Qing was doing it because of her admiration. When she heard the story, she immediately asked, Wait, you said that the sixth young master beat up his seventh brother-in-law. What happened? I heard about this from master's personal attendant. It's like this. Little Qing then told Hu Yan everything she knew. When she heard it, Hu Yan's eyes were filled with anger. Then, her worry turned into joy. She even waved her arm and said, Good, that's a good beating. A man who treats his wife badly deserves to be beaten. Oh, right, that Wang Go is an official in the Hanlin Academy. Will it be okay to beat him up like this? No. This is where the sixth young master is smart. He actually said that it was because he wanted to tell the emperor about Potato's good fortune, but he had no way. Unfortunately, he came to the Wang residence. He thought that since it was his seventh brother-in-law, he should have a way. Who knew that he would hit someone by accident? When Little Qing said this, she giggled. In her heart, she praised the sixth young master's ability to change the situation was really amazing. There is such a thing. After hearing it, Hu Yan was also happy. Then she said happily, Good, it's really good that you don't have to be sued after beating up such a bastard. At this moment, Hu Yan was obviously standing with Yang Qindong. When you truly love someone, everything that person does is right. But very quickly, she became unhappy again. Little Qing, who still had a dreamy look on her face, suddenly saw the change in Miss's expression and couldn't help but worry. Miss, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell somewhere? As she spoke, she even reached out to touch Hu Yan's forehead. Chapter 62. No. Hu Yan shook her head and dodged the jade pendant. She rested her chin on her hands and said bitterly, Little Qing, do you think that when a woman marries into her husband's family, she really has to resign herself to her fate? Think about how lively the Yang family's seventh young miss used to be. She was also doted on by everyone in her family. But after marrying into the Wang family, she actually has to work as a maid and servant. She can't even do anything about it. It's really too hard. Knowing what Little Qing was worried about, Little Qing quickly shook her head and said, That won't happen. If young miss gets married, won't master and lord stand up for you? No one will bully you. No. Hu Yan shook her head stubbornly. The Yang family's seventh young miss's identity is also not simple. Her father is Lord Yang Rong, who is not inferior to my grandfather at all. In fact, he is even stronger. But doesn't she still have to suffer? Sigh, Little Qing, I suddenly don't want to get married. Hearing Hu Yan's words, Xiao Qing didn't know how to persuade her. She sat down with her hands on her cheeks and looked out the window. Women are destined to marry, and they have to give birth to children for those men. This is our fate. But life is also divided into good and bad. If you really marry someone like Wang Go, then wouldn't your life be ruined? Wouldn't it be better not to marry and be a young lady for the rest of your life? Hu Yan shook her head. This matter had a great impact on her heart. It actually gave birth to a kind of premarital phobia that modern people had. Seeing that Hu Yan was really disheartened, Little Qing was afraid. If that was really the case, then master and lord would definitely punish her. What should she do then? Thinking of this, she was also a little terrified. But then, a person's name jumped into her mind. Young miss, you can marry the Yang family's young master. You see, for his sister's matter, he did not hesitate to break the law and beat someone to seek justice. This kind of man should be trustworthy. Marry the Yang family's sixth young master? Is he really worth entrusting your life to? At this moment, Hu Yan began to seriously consider this question. Red Light Street. It was located in the outer city of the capital, near the Chongwen Gate. At night, this place was brightly lit, and countless high officials and wealthy merchants could be seen here. The Ming dynasty had rules that forbade civil and military officials from sleeping at night or going to prostitutes. Every official who slept in a brothel would be flogged 60 times. The matchmaker would be reduced by one level, which meant that he would have to be flogged 60 times. Even the person who introduced him would have to be flogged. The sons and grandsons of officials were also punished with 60 strokes of the plank. There was once a commander of Guangdong's Hainan Guard who came to the capital to stay there and prostitute. Shiju, Bengshi Weiyuan Guard. It meant that the people with military positions were not allowed to sleep, prostitute, or marry the musicians of the musical house. Otherwise, they would be transferred to other guard stations. However, even if it was a punishment, he would still receive his salary. There was a song about a woman who did not know the sorrow of her country's destruction. She sang the flowers of the backyard across the river. Dumu's 2 lines of poetry nailed the singers, including the prostitutes, onto the pillar of shame, as if they were born cheap. However, this was just a theory of femme fatale. Who did Shang Nu sing for? Wasn't it all for the meat-eaters who shouldered the rise and fall of the country? If there wasn't anything they wanted to hear, would the singers be so bored as to sing to the water? Sing to the trees? Sing to the wind? To put it bluntly, these poor women were just scapegoats for the incapable and unprincipled men. In this regard, Yang Qindong's view was indeed different from other people's. In his view, existence was reasonable. Just like prostitutes, they had never stopped since ancient times. Just like when the Republic was first established, they disappeared under a serious blow, but didn't they reappear as soon as the economy developed? This was originally a demand. Since there was a demand, there should be a response. As long as it was used well, it could also reduce some crimes. Of course, it should be regulated, such as paying taxes, having regular physical examinations to ensure safety, and so on. Of course, with Yang Chendong's current status, it was impossible for him to bring up these things. That would be looking for trouble. The red light district was different from the ordinary willow alleys. The legal control here was much weaker. Most of the people here had skills, and most of them sold their skills instead of their bodies. Unless they really liked each other, it was another matter. Because of this, there was no need to be so afraid of officials appearing here. Tonight, Yang Chendong came here with the mentality of looking around, and at the same time, looking for talents. As the saying goes, every profession has its own master. What did this master refer to? Of course, it was talent. Just like those female celebrities in the future, there were good ones and clean ones, but what kind of state most of them were in, only they themselves knew. In fact, deep down, they didn't want to become that kind of person, but in the big picture, what could they do? If they weren't taken, there was no show to take. In this way, everyone else was popular like this, and the successors didn't matter. But it was undeniable that no matter how they became popular, they had a certain level of ability and could be considered talents. On the way here from the Yang family village, Yang Chendong had already heard from his fourth brother that there were two very famous courtesans in the red light district. They were famous for their skills and were the guests of many distinguished people. Most importantly, they really sold their skills instead of their bodies. To be able to persist in this kind of environment made Yang Chendong admire them very much. The first place he came today was called Jiao Yifang. As everyone knew, the ancients said that there were 6 arts: etiquette, music, archery, imperial, calligraphy, and mathematics. It was rumored that the courtesan, Lady Xiang, had 9 arts, especially dancing. Her figure had made many men forget to go home and forget to eat. Just like what his fourth brother said, Lady Xiang was born with a strange fragrance that made people intoxicated. Just by getting close to her, it could make people's thoughts run wild. It was indescribably beautiful. Regarding this, Yang Chendong believed. In the future, he would often hear people saying that a certain person had a body fragrance. This wasn't surprising. It was just that her sweat had a special smell that made people smell fragrant. Even though he had heard of it, he had been busy completing all kinds of missions back then and had never come into contact with such a woman. Now that he had the opportunity, he wanted to experience it. Yang was originally a profligate son. Naturally, he would come to places like Jiao Yifang often. However, because he didn't have a lot of money, he didn't feel satisfied every time he spent there. Thus, he didn't leave a deep impression on others. Now that his 6th brother was paying by his side, Yang's face was filled with excitement. Tonight, it was time for him to show off. It was also time for him to spend lavishly. The carriage arrived at the entrance of Jiao Yifang. After the carriage stopped, Yang excitedly lifted the curtains and went out. Taking this opportunity, Yang Chendong noticed that the entrance of Jiao Yifang was close to 3 zhang wide. It showed how deep the foundation of this place was. At that time, how was a person's ability? It could be seen from the width of the entrance. This was the first impression that Yang Chendong had. After alighting from the carriage, Tiger's mane and Beta Persei were left behind. Yang San and Yang Si, who were driving the carriage, stayed behind to observe who was coming and going. With the help of his brothers, Yang Chendong, who was also wearing green clothes, walked into the main Jiao Yifang with a folding fan in his hand. As soon as they entered the gate, a manservant came to greet them and lead the way. After walking for another 20 steps, they arrived in front of a large courtyard that was 2 stories high. They hadn't even entered the courtyard yet. Before they even entered, they could already hear the chatter of orioles. "Oh, isn't this Master Yang Si?" A well-dressed woman in her 30s was welcoming guests at the door. When she saw Yang, she recognized his identity at a glance. She immediately pretended to be surprised and shouted, Then, a fragrance wafted into Yang Yang's nose and she rushed over just like that. Haha. When Yang Yang saw this scene, he first looked up to the sky and laughed. Then, he naturally allowed the woman to rush in front of him and hold his arm. Casually, he put 5 taels of silver into the woman's wrist. Then, he asked naturally, "Is Lady Xiang here?" Yang Yang had never been so generous in the past when he gave out 5 taels of silver. As a result, the woman in charge of welcoming the guests had a happy expression on her face. She said in a coquettish voice, "Fourth Master Yang's luck is good. Tonight, Lady Xiang will play a song. I'm afraid it will start soon." "Is that so?" "That's good. Just let someone lead the way." Yang Yang smiled and nodded. Then, he touched the woman's chin and laughed loudly as he entered the courtyard. At this time, another maid came forward with a lantern and led Yang Si and the others into the courtyard. As Yang Qindong walked, he said to Yang Qindong, who was following beside him, "That was the receptionist just now. She is a female artist who is no longer popular. In fact, when they were young, they had some fame. However, now that they are old, they can no longer dance, sing, or play. Moreover, they were born lowly and had nowhere else to go. Thus, they decided to do this kind of business. Speaking of which, they are quite pitiful. Because of this, when the guests have the ability to take care of them, they will usually be given some silver." As if he was afraid that his 6th brother would blame him for giving out 5 taels of silver, Yang Yang explained. "It's fine. 4th brother can do as you see fit. The silver is not a problem." Yang Qindong smiled and shook his head. To him, 5 taels of silver was really nothing. If Gao Xiong and the others went out to rob, who knew how many 5 taels of silver would come into his account? Seeing Yang Qindong's indifferent expression, Yang Yang's heart was filled with confidence. He then said to the young girl who was leading the way, "This prince is not lacking in money. Find a good place, this is your reward." As he spoke, 2 taels of silver were handed over. "Thank you for the reward. This servant will lead you to the best place." Seeing how generous the reward was to her, the maidservant's face was filled with joy, and she became even more attentive as she led the way. The courtyard was brightly lit. Who knew how many candles and lanterns were lit? Just this alone would not be a small expense. Of course, the guests who could come here all had a small amount of money. They could casually give out enough to cover the expenses. Chapter 63. While he was still looking around, Yang Qindong was led to a square table. There were some fruits and tea placed on the table, and the location was close to the stage, where the performers were performing. Although it wasn't the closest, it was still not bad. Yang Yang naturally sat down there, and then his gaze began to wander. He accidentally saw a few familiar faces, and waved his hand to greet them. Seeing Yang Yang's obviously flaunting expression, Yang Qindong helplessly shook his head. "4th brother, what are you doing? Greeting acquaintances." "Sigh, 6th brother, you don't know, but I rarely get to sit in such a position. To be able to sit here, just the table fee is 20 silver taels." Yang Yang explained, and said with some heartache. It seems to be worth it." Yang Qindong also looked around. Looking at the environment, he nodded with satisfaction. He began to compare it with his own renovation drawings, and whether there was anything that could be improved. Seeing that Yang Qindong didn't seem to feel any heartache, Yang Yang relaxed. Although he was his own brother, he was still spending other people's money. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel guilty at all. He felt that he was putting on a show. In order to show that he was here, and mainly to not feel guilty in front of 6th brother, he carefully pointed at the 2 tables closer to the stage and said, "6th brother, do you see the people at those 2 tables?" Yang Qindong's gaze moved. In his line of sight, there were 2 young people in their 20s sitting at the 2 tables. They were dressed in brocade and satin, and had arrogant expressions. It seemed that they didn't care about anything. Knowing that 6th brother was paying attention to them, he laughed and introduced them in a low voice. The young master in the east who looks a bit older is Su Qingzong. The one in the west is Zhang De. Oh. Yang Qindong raised his eyebrows. Are they the descendants of the Duke of Wei and Duke Ying? Sixth brother is indeed knowledgeable. Su Qingzong was the eldest son of the current Duke of Wei, Su Qin. Now that his health wasn't too good, it was said that he would pass his title to this son. The one called Zhang De is only the second son of the Duke of Ying, Zhang Fu. I don't think he has a chance of inheriting the duke's position. However, I heard that he has a good relationship with his eldest brother, Zhang Mao. I think he should be able to live a comfortable life. In order to please his sixth brother, or in order to have more money to spend, Yang poured out as much as he knew. Yang Qindong nodded as he listened. He knew both of them, and the Security Bureau had done a detailed investigation before. Duke of Wei Su Qin, grandson of the Prince of Zhongshan Su De. At that time, Su De was known as the #1 contributor to the founding of the Great Ming Dynasty. Naturally, his descendants enjoyed an extremely honorable status and glory. However, the later generations were still the later generations, and there weren't any truly capable people. In addition, the previous generations of emperors were worried that their achievements would shock the emperor, so they had always suppressed the use of them, making it even harder for them to achieve anything. At present, Su Qin's health wasn't good, and he was bedridden every day. As his eldest son, Su Qingzong, became more and more popular, and his status naturally rose along with it. As for the other person, Zhang De, he was the second son of the Duke of Ying, Zhang Fu. As mentioned before, Zhang Fu had performed many meritorious deeds and could be considered a famous general. However, with the eunuchs in power, he was severely suppressed. This matter was mentioned in the previous chapter. Regardless, with the protection of the Duke of Ying, he wasn't someone that just anyone could offend. For a mere 9 arts workshop to be able to attract the support of 2 dukes' descendants, it could be seen that this Lady Xiang had some ability. Yang Qindong couldn't help but look forward to it even more. Yang Qindong sat on the chair calmly and took a sip of tea from time to time. Yang Qindong was enjoying himself here. This was his first time in the capital, so he didn't know many people. This saved him the trouble of greeting and feigning civility. Time slowly passed, and the hall grew more and more lively. More and more people were led to the tables by the maids, and slowly, the temperature in the hall began to rise. The odor of sweat began to fill the air, causing Yang Qindong to wrinkle his nose and shake his head. The ventilation here wasn't very good, so the odor couldn't quickly disperse. Just this point alone made it seem rather inferior. This wasn't like the immortal abode he was opening. Not only did it have transparent windows, it also had a layer of screen outside. In this way, it could ensure that the air was not only ventilated, but also that mosquitoes couldn't get in. This was a truly refreshing place. While they were waiting, or perhaps they were suffering, the number of seats in the hall had reached more than 70%. With a series of light footsteps, 2 young girls who could be considered decent walked onto the stage, each holding a pipa. Yang had been observing Yang Qindong this entire time, ready to give an explanation at a moment's notice. Seeing the 2 girls walk up, he leaned over and said, "Fourth brother, these 2 are here to warm up the scene. They aren't the main characters." Yang Qindong nodded. In his previous life, this was also how the theaters operated. The warm-up would appear first, and the main characters would only appear for the finale. With the appearance of the 2 warm-up girls, the hall became much quieter. The 2 girls bowed, and then the 2 girls holding the pipas slowly opened their cherry mouths and began to sing. Red dragonflies fly on the branches of the green poplar. When the spiders see him, they spread their webs, gazing at him with infatuation. Spiders, don't look at me. I advise you not to think too much about this trap. Even if you exhaust your mind, it's just that your webs won't catch up. The style of the song was very slow, and it often took half a day to sing a single line. It was very similar to the Kuan opera of his previous life. This was also a famous song with dragonflies at that time. Some people even nodded and shook their heads in appreciation, as if they were reciting the 4 books and 5 classics. But regardless of what others thought, Yang Chendong looked as if he was about to fall asleep. He was obviously used to the pop music of his previous life, and he really couldn't appreciate the song in front of him. The song lasted for nearly an hour. Under someone's praise, Yang Chendong, who was about to fall asleep, was awakened. When he raised his head, the 2 girls had already bowed and left. In their place was a beautiful woman in her 30s. From Yang Chendong's position, he could see a trace of melancholy in the corner of the woman's eyes. He guessed that it must be a kind of accumulation of life. It was impossible to say that she didn't have any grievances after spending so many years in the entertainment industry. On the contrary, all kinds of people had to be welcomed with a smile, and all kinds of people could make you unhappy. But since she was doing business, she could only welcome them with a smile. After a long time, this melancholy naturally merged with her soul. 4th brother, this person is the head procuress here, Cui Na. She was very beautiful when she was young, and even now, there are many people pursuing her. But all this time, she has been clean and has never had an affair with any man. Later on, she was chosen by the owner to manage this 9 arts hall. Speaking of which, she's not an easy woman. Yang, who was at the side, had a chance to show off, so how could he be polite? He envied his elder sister and younger sister in his heart. They could actually get a monthly salary of 1,000 taels from his 6th brother, but as his brother, he didn't get anything. This made him feel that it was unfair, and at the same time, he also had an idea. That was to curry favor with his 6th brother and get more money. At the very least, he had to get close to his elder sister and younger sister and get the money first. As for whether his 4th brother would be looked down upon by others if he tried to curry favor with his 6th brother, he didn't care. The world was big, but money was the biggest, wasn't it? Also, Cui Na has already come on stage, which means that Lady Xiang is about to come on stage. She came on stage to ask for a reward. This is also called asking for a reward. In a while, whoever gives more money may be favored by Lady Xiang. If the opportunity is good, it is also very possible to become a guest. Yang was still there chattering. At this time, there were already people throwing silver taels and copper coins on the stage. One thing to note here was that the great Ming dynasty didn't have banknotes, and even silver was very rare. The currency used by the Ming dynasty was the precious banknote at the beginning of the Ming dynasty. However, the precious banknote depreciated very quickly, so much so that it was like waste paper, and no one was willing to use it. Private transactions mainly used copper coins and silver, but before the inflow of silver from overseas in the late Ming dynasty, the Ming dynasty's silver stock was limited, and the imperial court prohibited the mining of silver, so the silver circulating in the market was not abundant. The time when the first banknote company appeared in China was about the first year of Daoguang in the Qing dynasty, after 1820. This first banknote company was called Rixingcheng, and it was from that time that banknotes appeared. Without banknotes, it also made it very inconvenient for people to trade when they went out. They often needed to bring a lot of silver or copper coins to trade. Just like now, people wanted to give a reward to attract the attention of Lady Xiang. For a time, silver taels filled the sky and flew onto the stage. Of course, only some small individual investors threw money on the stage. They gave too little, so they wanted to fish in troubled waters. They just wanted to prove that they were also generous people. Because they were embarrassed and had no money, they had this kind of method. For real rich people, there would be a pimp coming to the table with a plate to ask for money. Once he received the money, he would sing loudly to praise the noble status of the person who gave the money. Naturally, this kind of practice could also lead to a kind of competition mechanism, allowing more men to spend a lot of money here, so that they could have a better harvest. The pimp began to move, walking to the front of the table, and the silver taels on the copper plate began to gradually increase. Yang Hodong was watching this scene with interest. This was completely different from what he had imagined, so naturally, he was a little curious. While watching and imagining what kind of mechanism would be used when his restaurant opened, suddenly, he was awakened by a singing voice. "Thank you, young Master Wang, for the 50 taels of silver. Chapter 64. Following the voice, Yang Chendong turned his head and saw a seemingly elegant young man smiling as he placed 5 taels of silver on a copper plate. His gaze drifted around as if he was showing off his height, wealth, and handsomeness to others. Sixth brother, only those who tip over 50 taels of silver will be praised and remembered by Lady Xiang. How much should we tip? Noticing that Yang Chendong seemed to be moved, fourth brother Yang hurriedly added fuel to the fire. In any case, it was Yang Chendong's money. Even if he didn't tip Lady Xiang, he might not necessarily give it to him. Since that was the case, it was better to tip more. In that case, he would naturally be in the limelight. Oh, is there such a saying? Yang Chendong smiled when he heard this. Then, he raised his index finger toward Tiger Mane who was standing behind him. 100 taels? Sixth brother is bold. Yang thought that he understood. Looking at the gesture, he chuckled. Then, he sat down and waited for the turtle slave to come to his table so that he could show off. The turtle slave shouted and sang. Then, he handed the 10 taels of silver on the copper plate and some money from the other people to the little turtle slave behind him. Then, he walked to another table. However, it seemed that his good luck had run out. Or perhaps, most of the people who came today were embarrassed. In short, he didn't drink or sing. When he came to Yang Chendong's table, the turtle slave first lowered his head to show respect. Then, his gaze landed on the table of the 2 high dukes' descendants not far away. To be able to be a turtle slave who came to collect money, he had to have some status. Moreover, he had to have good eyesight. What kind of person could tip how much money? He could naturally tell at a glance. In his eyes, this wasn't Yang's first time here. This was the first time he had sat in such a good position. However, he was afraid that this was the extent of his ability. Perhaps there would be some money, but it definitely wouldn't be too much. Otherwise, he would have sat in the main seat where the 2 high dukes were sitting. Yang already knew the result, so he had been waiting for the arrival of the pimp so that he could perform well. When he saw that the other party didn't even look at him, he couldn't help but sneer. Then, he imitated Yang Chendong and nodded to Tiger's Mane behind him and said, "Reward." Tiger's Mane wouldn't listen to Yang, even if it was his 4th young master. However, with Yang Chendong's previous order, when he heard the word reward, he obediently untied the bundle on his body, took out some silver and placed it on the copper plate. Compared to young Master Wang's reward just now, the silver coins this time were all 20 taels per ingot. Once he placed the coins in his storage ring, he received 5 ingots in the blink of an eye. Yang looked like he was waiting for the tortoise slave to sing and drink, but who would have thought that Tiger's Mane still had no intention of stopping. The silver ingot in his hand continued to smash down. 10 ingots, 20 ingots, 30 ingots, 40 ingots, Yang's expression changed greatly. This was far more than 100 taels of silver, but he still had no intention of stopping. This Tiger's Mane couldn't be stupid, right? What was he doing? He wanted to say something to stop him, but he was worried that he would lose face. He could only look at his 6th brother, Yang Chendong, but he still couldn't understand. Because his 6th brother's face was full of smiles, as if he didn't see the situation in front of him. He was still calm and unmoved. At this moment, the tortoise slave was also dumbfounded. He originally thought that the Yang family's 4th young master would at most tip 3 to 5 taels of silver, but who would have thought that the 4th young master would throw 20 taels of silver into the copper plate without even blinking an eye? The clanking sound of the silver ingot being thrown into the copper plate was incessant, to the point where he had to use both hands to support it, but he still couldn't support it. Fortunately, the little tortoise slave behind him had good eyesight and had already come to help. The 2 of them were barely able to support it with 4 hands. In the past, when someone tipped, the tortoise slave only felt happy and excited. According to the rules, he could also get a certain commission. In other words, the more he was tipped, the more he would get. Only today, he felt the pressure. It was also the first time that he had the idea of quickly stopping the tipping because his hands really couldn't support it. Yang Yang and the tortoise slave's expression had already changed. Not only that, but the faces of everyone in the hall who saw this scene changed. Even Shui Na, who was standing on the stage, had her face turned red. It was unknown whether it was fear, excitement, or excitement. This scene also shocked the others. After the two high dukes saw this, their expressions also changed. When they saw a large amount of silver appearing on the copper plate, they seriously looked at Yang Chendong and Yang Chendong, who was sitting beside him with an indifferent expression. What kind of person was Yang Yang? They often met him here, so they naturally knew. He was just the fourth young master of the Yang family. It was impossible for him to have such financial resources. Of course, it wasn't that they looked down on Yang Yang. Because even if he had so much money, he wouldn't take it all out. He still had to live. Not to mention, even if he took out so much silver, he might not be able to get Lady Xiang's favor. One had to know that with this amount of silver in hand, who knew how many concubines he could marry. There were other people who were also shocked when they saw this scene. There was envy, jealousy, and hatred in their eyes. Just like young Master Wang, who had just tipped 50 taels, his face was originally full of arrogance, but now even his head was lowered. He only tipped 50 taels and was already so complacent. Compared to the Yang family's tipping, wasn't he too ignorant and stupid? Regardless of what other people thought, Tiger's Mane followed Yang Chendong's orders and took out silver ingots one by one. Finally, after taking out a total of 1,000 taels, he stopped and then closed the huge bag on his body. 1,000 taels of silver was equivalent to 100 caddies, but the bag didn't seem to have decreased by much. People couldn't help but wonder how much silver was left in the bag. At the same time, they couldn't help but admire Tiger's Mane's strength. He didn't even bend over while carrying such a heavy bag. Looking at the two slaves who were already bent over by the weight of the 100 caddies of silver ingots, two more slaves came from afar to help. Only then did the leader find the time to sing. Yang Si has a reward, 1,000 taels of silver. As soon as the singing came out, the whole audience suddenly became quiet, but then it became noisy. Some of the friends who had greeted Yang Yang before stood up from afar and cupped their fists to look at him. At this time, they were all proud to have made such a friend. Yang Yang, who had stolen the limelight, naturally also stood up and cupped his fists to salute everyone. His big mouth almost reached the back of his ears, and there was no need to mention how happy he was. This was definitely the day he was proudest of in his life. At this moment, he felt as if he had reached the peak of his life, and his status seemed to have been raised by a lot. But what he didn't know was that those who were smart didn't even look at him, but at Yang Chendong, who was sitting at the side. There were even smarter people who had already guessed the identity of this person. The tortoise lowered its head so low that it almost reached its waist. Then, it bent its head and bowed. It wasn't that there were no people who had tipped 1,000 taels of silver in the past, but they could be counted with one hand. Moreover, the last time was a long time ago. At least, this was the first time he had been tipped as a slave. One could imagine how excited he was. When he thought of the commission he could get, he was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Turtle's Mane finally left and went to another table. But with Yang Yang, an unpolished jade, in front of everyone, it was naturally difficult for other people's rewards to enter the eyes of others. Even if Su Qingzong and Zhang De each tipped 100 taels of silver, why did they feel that the slaves were so weak when they were singing? After the tipping session, the head of the house, the brothel keeper Cui Na, bowed again and then slowly retreated. She was replaced by a young girl wearing a red muslin dress, who walked on the stage with 4 maids with the same appearance. It was Miss Xiang. She didn't do anything, but as soon as she appeared, she immediately attracted the loud cheers of everyone in the hall. Yang Chendong looked up. She was wearing a rose-scented tight robe with sleeves and an emerald green skirt with scattered flowers. Her waist was tied into a big bow with golden silk soft smoke gauze. Her hair was hanging low and was inserted with a jasper phoenix hairpin. Her slender figure was seductive and charming. The first impression she gave to the sixth young master was that she was gorgeous. This kind of person was described by the phrase, gorgeous and indescribable. She was very similar to the young Hong Kong actress Guan Jilin, who gave people a sense of seduction, eroticism, and temperament. When Yang Qindong looked at her, Miss Xiang also looked at him. At that moment, their eyes met. At this moment, the sixth young master felt that his heart seemed to beat a few more times. Sixth brother, she's looking at me. She's looking at me. This beautiful feeling was quickly disrupted by fourth brother Yang Qindong. He looked like a pig, and his saliva was about to flow out. He kept pulling Yang Qindong's sleeve and kept repeating it. Yang Qindong's thoughts instantly returned to normal. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He already knew that Miss Xiang was powerful. She could easily seduce people's souls. Often, with just a look, she could make a man lose control of himself. As soon as Miss Xiang appeared, the scene suddenly became a little crazy. Everyone's eyes were like a rain of arrows, flying directly toward the stage. Miss Xiang seemed to be used to this. She still did her own thing. First, she bowed apologetically. Then, a wooden table and a guqin appeared in front of her. Her jade-white hands gently moved forward and landed on the strings of the guqin. Then, a soul-stirring sound of the guqin was heard. In an instant, the whole place quieted down. This was the strength of the courtesan queen. She could suppress the stage in an instant and play a role in suppressing the audience. Following which, her jade-like hands continued to stroke the guqin. Beautiful melodies echoed out and entered people's ears, causing them to feel relaxed and happy. Chapter 65. As her jade-like hands gently plucked the strings, her slender fingers quickly played on the strings. The sound of the zither was sharp and high-spirited, but not abrupt. It was like countless fierce horses galloping fiercely. Yang Qindong was also moved by this beautiful music. At this moment, the sound of the zither in his ears was both high and low. It was deep, gentle, and passionate. Just as the sixth young master was immersed in it, the sound of the zither suddenly changed and turned into a charming tenderness. Lady Xiang finally opened her mouth and slowly said, "Make an appointment with your lover, agree to finish the renovation of the peony platform and peony field when the flower blooms, wait for the flower to germinate and deliver it. It's almost the Qingming festival, and the head of the flower is not growing. Thinking of last year's flower, is about to bloom. Why is it so late this year?" This was a very famous song in the Ming dynasty, Blooming Flowers. It talked about the love between a man and a woman, and it was even very explicit. As the spectators who were extremely familiar with these songs, they naturally heard everything and nodded their heads incessantly. However, in Yang Qindong's ears, it really made him feel uncomfortable. In addition to the different appreciation of the world, Yang Qindong still thought that such a song was misleading the children by letting a beauty like Lady Xiang sing it. It was like a great singer who sang bel canto. If you made him sing a children's song, how could it give people a good feeling? Yang Qindong naturally shook his head in displeasure. Even Yang, who was beside him, did not notice this scene. Perhaps he was immersed in the beautiful voice of his wife, but there was one person who saw it clearly. It was young Master Wang, who was not far from the table. Young Master Wang naturally had a name. Wang Si, also known as Yitzi, was an editor of the Hanlin Academy, a 7th grade official position. Of course, these were not important. He had a more important identity, which was the eldest grandson of Wang Ji, the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. His grandfather was the heavenly official of the Ministry of Personnel, so one could imagine how bright Wang Si's future would be. Just now, he had been humiliated by Yang. Although he was not a vengeful person, it would be great if he had a chance to get back at Yang. When he was listening to the music just now, he inadvertently glanced at Yang's table. After all, the limelight was taken away by this table. Coincidentally, he saw Yang Qindong shaking his head. He was very sure that this shaking of the head was not the same as the shaking of the head. It wasn't the kind of reaction where they would shake their heads in admiration. Instead, it was a reaction where they didn't understand, didn't agree, and didn't like it. This time, he thought he had found an opportunity. Ignoring Lady Xiang, who was still singing, he suddenly stood up from his seat, pointed to Yang Yang's table, and asked loudly, "Brother, why are you shaking your head? Do you dislike Lady Xiang's singing?" Originally, everyone was immersed in the beautiful music. Suddenly being interrupted, and such a loud voice at that, everyone woke up from their state of enjoyment. However, when they saw that the person who flew into a rage was Wang Si, many people immediately stopped thinking about scolding him. Lady Xiang was immersed in singing and was suddenly interrupted, so she was displeased. However, when she saw that it was Wang Si, she knew that she couldn't afford to offend him. However, since she was on the stage, she naturally had to stand up and give her greetings. Then, with a voice as pleasant as an oriole's, she said, "Young Master Wang, I'm really sorry, Lady Xiang, this has nothing to do with you. I'm talking about the person who was dissatisfied with the music. Hey, I'm talking about you. Since you have the guts to shake your head, why don't you have the courage to stand up?" Wang Si interrupted Lady Xiang. If it were any other time, he would probably be very happy that this woman took the initiative to talk to him. However, he was angry now, and he was complaining about the injustice for the goddess in his heart. Naturally, he wouldn't answer more questions. The spearhead was pointed at Yang Chendong. From the moment Wang Si shouted, Yang Chendong knew that he was referring to someone, and the person he was referring to was him. Originally, he shook his head because he wasn't used to the music of this era. In addition, he felt that with Lady Xiang's condition, singing such a song was really uncultured and beneath his status. However, he didn't expect that he would be discovered and pointed out on the spot. His fourth brother, Yang Yang, had already mentioned Wang Si's identity. He was the eldest grandson of the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji. With such an identity, it was natural for him to be full of confidence and arrogance. Of course, this was only in the eyes of others. In Yang Chendong's eyes, it was nothing more than a fleeting cloud. Not to mention Wang Si, even if his biological grandfather, Wang Ji, was here, Yang Chendong would do what he should do. He would never let himself be wronged because of the other party's identity and let others criticize him. Therefore, after glancing at Wang Si, he chuckled and said, "What's wrong? Could it be that there's a rule that the listener can only praise the song and can't have other opinions?" Wang Si was speechless. How could there be a rule that required the listener to listen to the song? This was a pastime, and one could just follow one's mood. However, although there was no rule, the person performing on the stage was Lady Xiang. She was the person that Wang Si had been thinking about day and night. If it wasn't for her background, he would have begged his grandfather to take her as a concubine. However, the top courtesan was also a lowly person. Based on this rule, she could never enter the Wang family. As the saying goes, the best is what you can't get. It was precisely because he couldn't get her that Wang Si felt the benefits of Lady Xiang. If he had extra money, he would definitely come to support her. Yang Chendong really looked down on the goddess in his heart. Based on this, he couldn't take it lying down. Yes, there isn't any law that stipulates this, but everyone who comes here is here for Lady Xiang. Are you going to say that they aren't? If you're not, why are you here? Please leave now. As he spoke, Wang Si pointed in the direction of the door with an indignant expression. Wang Si lived up to his name. He was indeed very smart. Knowing that he couldn't use the law, he used Lady Xiang's name. For a moment, it aroused the anger of the crowd. Most people stood up and pointed angrily at Yang Chendong in order to curry favor with Lady Xiang. They said, "If you don't want to watch, get out now." Not far away, the descendants of the two Grand Dukes didn't join in the condemnation. Instead, they watched the scene with great interest. They had already guessed Yang Chendong's identity. It was very likely that he was the sixth young master of the Yang family who presented the great gift to the emperor today. Because of this, he was given the position of secondary grade 5 servant to the crown prince. With such a big gift and the previous incident with Yang Bao, they didn't think that he was a master that could be easily manipulated by others. However, the situation was not good now. They wanted to see how the sixth young master of the Yang family would break the situation. So many people suddenly pointed their spears at Yang Chendong. Tiger's mane and Beta Persei instinctively wanted to flash in front of the young master to protect him. However, the sixth young master waved his hand as if he didn't care. He noticed that Wang Si only asked him to get out in anger and didn't even add the word scram. From this, it could be seen that this person was reasonable. At least, he wasn't the kind of idiot who would bring trouble to himself. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than the fact that he had previously overshadowed Lady Xiang with his gift. In addition, he had shown a trace of disrespect to Lady Xiang, which led to the incident. This was just the thought of a young and frivolous person. If it were any other time, Yang Chendong would have just laughed and left the place after that. If he did this, perhaps others would say that he was weak. However, real weakness didn't depend on how others evaluated him. It depended on whether he had a strong heart. There was no doubt that Yang Chendong had a strong heart. However, he still wouldn't leave, not for any other reason but because it didn't fit in with his plan. From the moment he entered the Nine Arts workshop, Yang Chendong had been implementing his plan to recruit talents. This included the 1,000 taels of silver as a reward. It seemed like he was spending a lot of money, but in fact, he was just using this opportunity to leave a deep impression in Lady Xiang's heart. Then, he could use this opportunity to chat with her. He believed that with his understanding of music, it wouldn't be difficult to persuade her to join his force. Because he came with the intention of recruiting her, and Lady Xiang was a talent who met his standards, he couldn't just leave so casually. Losing face was a small matter, but ruining his plan was a big matter. "Are you young Master Wang?" Yang Chendong decided to fight back. At the same time, this was a good opportunity for him to perform. As long as there was an opportunity, he would grasp it tightly. Yes. Wang Si saw that Yang Chendong wasn't displeased by his words at all. On the contrary, he treated him with respect, so the anger in his heart lessened. "I'm Yang Chendong. Greetings." The sixth young master chuckled and cupped his fists. After announcing his name, Yang Chendong waited to see the changes in everyone's expressions. Reality didn't disappoint him. As expected, many people's expressions changed drastically. Regardless of whether it was Yang Bao or today's auspicious item, potato, they were enough to make him famous. He wasn't a nobody. As the saying went, a person's name was like a tree's shadow. After his name was announced, many people's attitudes changed. After knowing that he was the founder of Yang Bao, the author of the books Condor Shooting and Shao Li's Flying Dagger, and that he was a fifth-rank official, many people who thought they weren't strong enough quickly shut their mouths. This was the reality. When someone's strength was much stronger than yours, it was another matter whether you still wanted to find trouble with them. This could be said to be selfish, but it was also human nature. Besides, it was true that they were here to see Madame Shui, but they wouldn't offend a young fifth-grade official for such a trivial matter, let alone for such a woman. After his name was announced, many people suddenly shut their mouths and returned to their seats. They were completely different from the people who had been heckling just now. Chapter 66. Wang Si frowned slightly when the situation changed. Then, he quickly adjusted his mentality and sneered, "What's wrong? Yang Jima, are you trying to oppress me with your power?" No, I just want to announce my name so that everyone can criticize me better." Yang Chendong smiled and waved his hand. Then, he changed the topic and asked. Young Master shook his head because he felt that such a song was not suitable for Miss Xiang to sing. The song was too bitter, so he shook his head. "I didn't expect young Master Wang to see it." "Hee, it's embarrassing." Wang Si took the initiative to say that he shook his head. It showed that he did not look down on Miss Xiang, but it was because the song was not suitable. In this way, it immediately attracted Miss Xiang's gratitude on the stage. Madame Xiang was unhappy that Madame Xiang had pointed the spearhead at her. She was just a courtesan. In the end, she was just a somewhat famous actress. Everything she did was just to earn more money and live a better life. In her later years, she would have something to rely on. How could she be willing to participate in the struggle? On the surface, these people were complaining for her, but they just wanted to perform well. They wanted to leave a deeper impression on her so that they could take her body. She had seen this kind of thing many times. No matter what the result of the fight was, it seemed that it would only be bad for her and not good for her. However, this was how it was in the entertainment field. The fighting and scheming between the top courtesans and the mutual deception between the guests was unavoidable and could not be avoided. She wanted to withdraw from the stage when such a thing happened just now. However, these people came for her. If she withdrew now, she did not know what kind of trouble it would cause. Just when she was helpless, Yang Chendong took the initiative to stand up and said that it had nothing to do with him. How could Miss Xiang not be grateful? With just a few words, Yang Chendong took all the blame on himself. In this way, it seemed that he was magnanimous and decent, not caring about other people's faults. Wang Si saw that Miss Xiang had been taken out of the picture as soon as Miss Xiang said those words. Wang Si's momentum had weakened, and Miss Xiang didn't even intend to pursue the matter. If Wang Si still fought for justice for Miss Xiang, wouldn't it be a little petty? He was smart at the moment. Since he could not put the blame on Miss Xiang, he would put the blame on Yang Chendong. Let's see how Yang Chendong would explain it. Oh. In that case, we have wronged the sixth young master. Wang Si only said that he was the sixth young master and did not mention his official position. This was also smart of him. After all, if he had to call young Master Wang's official position, it would only weaken his momentum. But the sixth young master has always been a man of many talents. The books he wrote are even more wonderful, making people forget to eat and sleep after reading them. If he is so talented, he must have a good opinion on the path of music. Wang Si is not talented, but I am willing to learn a thing or two. Wang Si was unyielding, or rather, he wanted to use this opportunity to get back at young Master Wang. As long as Yang Chendong said that he did not understand the path of music, he would attack Yang Chendong for saying that he did not understand the path of music. If he were to say that he understood the way of music, then he would definitely have to perform a song on the spot. If that was the case, then wouldn't a dignified imperial scholar, a fifth-ranked official, have to sing some kind of romantic and elegant song? Wouldn't that be a laughingstock? All in all, this was a dead end where everything he said was wrong. There was no lack of smart people in the hall. After hearing Wang Si's words, they looked at Yang Chendong with a gloating expression, waiting for him to fall into their trap and be humiliated. Fourth brother Yang was naturally a smart person. One had to know that being a dandy in the capital was not something that could be done with a little status. Most of the time, one had to use their brains. Seeing that someone was pointing at his sixth brother, he stood up agitatedly, wanting to refute the accusation. However, before he could say anything, Yang Chendong grabbed his arm, and then a huge force came, forcing him to sit back in his chair. Yang Chendong was still wondering where his sixth brother got this strength from when he heard Yang Chendong's voice. It seems that this young master knows a little about the path of music. Ah! Did he just admit it? Hearing this answer, everyone in the audience suddenly became excited. In their view, the best way for Yang Chendong to deal with this matter was to leave without saying anything. It was fine if he lost some face like that, but at the very least, it wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. But since he had admitted to it, how could Wang Si let him off? Sure enough, when he heard Yang Chendong say that he knew a little about the path of music, Wang Si was overjoyed, and he quickly said, "Oh? Then I wonder if sixth young master can sing a song so that we can see what kind of song can be considered a good song. What kind of song can make people shake their heads?" Wang Si spoke quickly, as if he was afraid that Yang Chendong would go back on his words. After he finished speaking, he bowed to Lady Xiang on the stage and said, "I'll have to trouble Lady Xiang to let go of the zither and give our sixth young master a chance to perform." This action was equivalent to putting Yang Chendong on a horse. At this moment, if the sixth young master backed out, he would only be seen as a braggart and would be looked down upon. Ah! Sixth brother, you can't. I remember that there is an urgent matter at home. Let's go back first. Seeing all this, Yang finally realized that the matter had become serious. He quickly stood up and spoke in a voice that others could hear. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter. Obviously, everyone could see that Yang was looking for a way out and an excuse to leave. Yang's reaction is quite fast. Su Qingzong, the son of the Duke of Wei, who had been sitting at the table and watching the show, laughed with a trace of admiration in his eyes. In his heart, he also thought that this was the only way out for Yang Chendong. Not only Su Qingzong, but almost half of the people thought so. Some of them even looked disappointed because the show was about to end and there was no more fun to be had. Just when everyone thought that Yang Chendong would definitely leave, he suddenly asked, "It's so late. Nothing will happen at home. If there is something, it will be something in your heart." He rejected it. Everyone heard Yang Chendong's voice clearly. Then, they looked at him with eyes full of surprise, curiosity, and even more excitement. Yang Chendong finally couldn't stand the provocation and entered the trap. If that was the case, wouldn't there be a good show to watch? They thought that after tonight, they would be able to boast to their friends that they saw a fifth-rank official of the imperial court singing a love song. That would definitely be a shocking thing. Sixth brother, you. Yang had already given him a way out and didn't hesitate to attract the ridicule of others. He never thought that his sixth brother would reject his kindness. For a moment, he was stunned and didn't know what to say. On the other hand, Yang Chendong patted his fourth brother's shoulder lightly to express his gratitude for his kindness. Then, he laughed and walked towards the spectators' stand. Yang Chendong's action quickly attracted the attention of everyone present. Some people were still in shock and hadn't recovered from their shock. What's going on? Is the sixth young master of the Yang clan really going up to sing a love song? If that's the case, then there's going to be a big joke. Although there was no rule saying that an official couldn't do that, such a thing was a disgrace to the educated. Presumably, after this matter, someone would impeach him in the imperial court. If something went wrong, it would create an eternal joke that he would be promoted today and dismissed tomorrow. At this time, even Su Qingzong and Zhang De, the descendants of the two marquises, couldn't help but stand up. They all felt the seriousness of the matter. If they were really impeached in the imperial court, as the people present, they would definitely be reprimanded because of this. Later, their father would probably ground them or something like that. On the stage, Lady Xiang had been standing there in shock and didn't know what to do. Of course, she knew what the imperial court's attitude towards them was. She also knew what serious consequences would there be once the sixth young master of the Yang clan, a fifth-rank official of the imperial court, sang on the stage in front of her. If the punishment was light, the 9 Arts workshop would be confiscated and people would be assigned to the musical house, officials, prostitutes. If the punishment was heavy, they would be assigned to the frontier and banished to the army. That would be a fate worse than death. Thinking of these terrible consequences, Lady Xiang naturally stepped forward and wanted to stop Yang Chendong. However, before she did so, the sixth young master showed a confident smile. "Lady Xiang, stand aside and listen to the new song I brought. What do you think?" It seemed that she was infected by Yang Chendong's smile, or perhaps she was forced by his momentum. In short, at this moment, Lady Xiang took several steps back and gave the stage to Yang Chendong, who was in a cyan robe. Standing on the stage, Yang Chendong found that he could see everyone in the field more clearly. Then, he smiled. Then he said, after listening to the song Blooming Flowers, "I felt that although it was artistic, it was still too sentimental. It couldn't be sung by everyone and was catchy." What? Everyone can sing it? Catchy? The people who heard it were shocked. Are you kidding? Who are they? How could it be possible for her to sing so casually? wouldn't that be degrading themselves? Of course, no one would admit that the song at that time was too difficult and that not everyone could sing that tune. No one would admit that they were not capable enough. It seemed that he had known that everyone would be surprised. Yang Qindong laughed and said, "The song that young master is going to sing next also has some artistic conception, but more importantly, it is catchy. Unless the 5 notes are really incomplete, everyone can learn it after learning it once. Next, I'm going to embarrass myself. Beta Persei, give me the thing." Yang Qindong's shout startled everyone, but then a black shadow flew out of the air and fell steadily into Yang Qindong's hand. Then he took off the black cover that wrapped the thing. Suddenly, something that looked like a pipa but was not a pipa fell into everyone's sight. Yang Qindong carried it on his body. Chapter 67. It was a guitar, and it was also a modern product. It was something from Yang Qindong's dormitory, and it appeared here together with Datsang. As mentioned before, Yang Qindong would act as anyone in order to complete various tasks. He once learned vocal music to get in touch with his target. Now was the time for him to put on a good show. With the guitar in his hand, Yang Qindong's confidence overflowed. He originally brought this thing with him to discuss things with Lady Xiang. Yang Qindong knew that for talented people, especially people like Lady Xiang, money could only be the 3rd most important thing. Love and talent were the most important things for them. Love was something that Yang Qindong couldn't give them now. He didn't even have a wife. If he married a slut first, he didn't know how others would criticize him. At that time, it was really a matter of public criticism. Since that was the case, he could only give them talent. He believed that the beauty of music was universal. Just like the people in the future, there were people who liked Beijing opera and Kunku opera. He did not believe that the songs of the future would not work in this era. The popular and catchy feeling would be unforgettable once they came into contact with it. For example, the few military songs that he taught were already proof. Even if the military songs could be accepted by the people of the current era, he also asked Xiao Yu. She said that the military songs were really good. The beautiful melody was not something that those people of the current era could sing. It was Xiao Yu's words that gave Yang Qindong confidence. That was why he dared to stand on this stage and perform. However, even though he was confident in his heart, Yang Qindong still did not want to use something too advanced to stimulate others in the beginning. For example, if he used Jay Chou's nunchaku, the speed of the singing would probably be too fast. With a hum and haha, people would be confused. If they could not hear it clearly, how could they learn it? Therefore, he had to first use something that was more popular and more accepted in this era. Although it was as distant, at least they could understand the meaning of the words. Today, not only was Yang Qindong going to sing, but he was also going to teach. The people present were his first batch of listeners and students. Now that he had decided to sing, everyone in the hall held their breaths. They wanted to see what the 6th young master, who was known as multi-talented, was going to sing. Just as everyone was building up their emotions, Yang Qindong suddenly put his guitar behind his back and said with a smile, "Since everyone is giving me face, today, this young master will follow the rules and do something exciting. How about it?" Although the question was asked, there was no reply for a long time because no one knew what he was going to do. Only Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei reacted quickly and answered loudly, "Okay." The 2 of them were used to the 6th young master being outstanding. In their eyes, as long as the 6th young master wanted to do something, there was nothing he could not do, and nothing he could not do well. Singing was naturally the same. For example, weren't those military songs from the 6th young master's mouth? Now that they all knew how to sing, everyone said that it was good. Haha. Seeing that there were only 2 people supporting him, Yang Qindong did not care. Instead, his body first relaxed, then tensed up. He immediately took out his singing skills, and then a loud and clear voice came out from his mouth. "That day, Grandpa took me to see Beijing opera. I saw a lot of big faces on the stage. Red, white, yellow, green, blue, grinning and staring. They sang and shouted at the same time. Wow, 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 wow. It was like thunder, chattering in my ears. His opening speech had shocked everyone. That clear voice, without any hesitation, knocked on their hearts like a hammer, making them feel carefree for no reason. The blue-faced Doerdun stole the horse, the red-faced Guangong fought Changsha, the yellow-faced Dian Wei, the white-faced Chow Chow, the black-faced Zhang Fei, called Cha-Cha. Suddenly, the climax began, which was the easiest part for people to learn to sing. As soon as the lyrics came out, many people became serious and even excited. At this moment, Su Qingzong and Zhang De opened their mouths wide. Wang Si, who was looking for fault, also opened his mouth wide, showing an expression of disbelief. The whole hall was also very quiet, and only Yang Qindong's loud voice was still surging out. To be honest, the Peking opera's face is really good, but the singer is singing in a dialect. I can't understand it no matter how hard I listen to it. The third part was said casually, but it seemed to be referring to something. The rhythm of Lady Xiang's singing was too slow, and even people who heard it for the first time couldn't understand it. As soon as the words came out, it was obvious that Lady Xiang, who was standing aside and didn't know what to do, hurriedly lowered her head. It was not because she was afraid, but because she was shy. Then came the climax. The purple heavenly king holds the pagoda, the green devil fights the yiksha, the golden monkey king, the silver demon, the gray elf, ha. In order to let people in the hall understand the meaning, Yang Qindong tirelessly sang it 5 times in a row. He didn't stop until he felt that his throat was a little dry. Fortunately, on the 3rd time, at the climax, there were already people singing along. After all, as Yang Qindong said, the lyrics and melody were simple, easy to understand, and easy to sing. By the 4th time, more and more people began to sing along. By the 5th time, more than half of the people could already sing along with the song. Just when everyone was used to the melody and wanted to continue singing until the end, Yang Qindong suddenly stopped. He couldn't sing "Rap Mask" too softly. He really felt that his mouth was dry. Fortunately, there was someone who understood him. Tiger's Mane had already prepared tea and was waiting by the side. When he saw the 6th young master stop, he quickly handed him the tea. After Yang Qindong drank it up, he turned around and walked back to the stage. At this time, too many people were still immersed in "Rap Mask." It was the first time they heard such a simple and high-spirited song, and they felt that it seemed to be something prepared for their men. For something like this, what's the harm in singing it in front of others? What's the harm? Just when everyone was still immersed in this passionate "Rap Mask," a very light voice suddenly sounded. After everyone was stunned, they looked at the stage and saw Yang Qindong gently moving the guitar while speaking softly. A long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Lao San and his family lived next to them. They had nothing to do and even smoked big cigarettes. Big cigarettes existed in the 6th dynasty's era and were used as a tribute in the Tang dynasty. There were already many people who smoked in the country in the late Ming dynasty. The old couple had no children, so they gave their daughter a pet name, Delian. When Delian grew to the age of 16 or 17, she was really slim and graceful. The matchmakers kicked the door down, but Song Lao San and his wife only ate, drank, and played all day long. They didn't care about their daughter's marriage. Later, they met a young farmer, Tong Xiaolu, and the two of them fell in love secretly. Once, Tong Xiaolu came to Delian's house. The two of them were secretly having a rendezvous and were discovered by their parents. This time, they got into big trouble. It was an insult to their ancestors and a disgrace to their family. Delian's father used a leather whip to beat Delian until her skin and flesh were torn open. He gave her a kitchen knife, a rope, and a pair of scissors and told her to kill herself. In the end, Delian was forced to jump into the Qingshui River at the entrance. When Tong Xiaolu heard that Delian had jumped into the river and died, he brought the joss paper to the Qingshui River. On a windy and rainy night, he came to pay respects to his sister Delian. After paying his respects, poor Tong Xiaolu also jumped into the river. This was a tragic love story where both sides died for each other. First, he narrated the story in a narrative way. Then, the sound of the guitar accelerated, accompanied by Yang Chendong's clear voice. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, and the willow leaves fill the sky. Dear Lord Ming, listen to me carefully. This matter happened at Shijing's Blue Indigo Factory. In the Blue Indigo Factory's firearms camp, there is a Song Lao San. Speaking of this Song Lao San, the couple smoked a lot and never had a son to give birth to a daughter, Chan Wan. Amidst the soft singing, the story was slowly spat out. The content was clear and the melody was easy to understand. It allowed people to quickly immerse themselves in it. The people in the audience who were originally agitated by the rap mask began to calm down. Then, they were brought into the story and could not extricate themselves. In particular, Miss Xiang, who was standing at the side, was already in tears. It was obvious that she had judged others by herself and thought of herself. In some ways, how could they not be the same? There were many things that were beyond their control, especially when it came to love. How could they have more choices? Yang Chendong's voice continued. He still wanted everyone to understand. After the first time, he only paused for a moment before singing the second time. Then, on the third time, Miss Xiang had already adjusted her emotions. She held the guqin and began to cooperate with Yang Chendong. It had to be said that the top courtesan was indeed the top courtesan. In terms of understanding and acceptance of music, she was indeed much faster than Yang Chendong. At least if it were him, it would be very difficult for him to completely understand the melody after listening to it twice. Miss Xiang did it. Not only that, but because the lyrics were easy to understand, she even began to sing along. At the backstage, the head courtesan, Cui Na, was quickly writing down the lyrics with a brush. She had a feeling that this song, exploring the Qingshui River, would become very popular. If the Nine Arts Workshop could be the first to sing it, it would definitely be very popular. At that time, customers would come in droves and their business would be several times better. They would even be able to get more money when they tipped people. Of course, this was based on the sixth young master's authorization. This time, he sang it 4 times. When he saw that Miss Xiang was almost done, Yang Chendong laughed and stopped playing the guqin. He stood up and looked at Wang Si, who still looked like he wanted to continue. Young Master Wang, what do you think of my song? Chapter 68. All right. Wang Si was a straightforward person. He stood up immediately. Not only did he say good, but he also sighed and said apologetically, Wang Si underestimated the sixth young master previously. I sincerely apologize to you. I hope the sixth young master won't take it to heart. Huh, what's there to take it to heart? Speaking of which, you also contributed. If you hadn't provoked me like this, I'm afraid this young master wouldn't have dared to come up on stage and embarrass myself. Yang Chendong laughed without the slightest hint of blame. Wang Si was also a clever person. He smiled and said, then we won't have the good fortune to enjoy such beautiful music, right? Ha ha ha. Immediately, the two of them smiled at each other and the enmity between them disappeared. The others immediately applauded. Affected by the atmosphere, Duke Wei's son, Su Qingzong also stood up. He was obviously older than Yang Chendong, but he still cupped his fists and said, Sixth young master, Su Qingzong rarely admires people. You are one of them. Greetings. Greetings, eldest young master Su. Yang Chendong didn't expect Su Qingzong to stand up at this time. This was the descendant of Duke Wei and would be the next Duke Wei. He didn't dare to slight him and cupped his fists to return the greeting. On the other side, Duke Zhangfu's second son, Zhang De, also stood up and cupped his fists. Sixth young master, your performance and music are indeed easy to understand and catchy. Zhang De intends to make friends with you. But I wonder if there are any other songs for people to enjoy? When Zhang De said this, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Chendong. Even Lady Xiang's face was full of anticipation. "Ha, haven't you enjoyed enough?" Yang Chendong laughed heartily. He thought that he had to strike while the iron was hot. While these people were still able to accept the new music, he should release some more. Immediately, he nodded heavily. "All right, since that's the case," second young master Zhang also said that we should make friends. "Since that's the case, I'll give everyone a song called Friends." With a smile, Yang Chendong picked up the guitar on his body and began to play it gently. "All these years, I've been alone. The wind has passed, the rain has gone, I've cried, I've made mistakes, but I still remember what I've persevered for. Only when I've truly loved someone will I understand that I'll be lonely. I'll look back, I'll have dreams, I'll have you in my heart." A seemingly peaceful piece of music poured out the bits and pieces of a person's growth process. Then, the voice suddenly rose, and the eyes looked at Zhang De, Su Qingzong, Wang Si, Yang Yang, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and everyone else in the field, singing, "Friends walk together for life, those days will no longer exist. One sentence, a lifetime of love, a glass of wine, friends have never been lonely. Once I call you a friend, you will understand." Every time Yang Chendong's eyes landed on someone, that person could not help but straighten his body. He was excited to receive the sixth young master's gaze. This was one of the songs that made Zhou Huajin famous. Once this song was played, it was naturally unrivaled. After only 2 performances, more and more people below the stage responded. Many of them even had tears in their eyes, as if they had experienced the meaning of being friends again from this song. As soon as the 3 new songs of Rap Mask, Exploring Qingshui River, and Friend came out, everyone looked at Chu Fifan with more admiration in their eyes. No one knew who took the lead to shout, "Dong Shui! East Marshal! One more song! East Marshal! East Marshal!" It was as loud as thunder. The loud voice spread out from the 9 Art Square, causing the passers-by to stop and look at each other. They could not understand what was going on here today. After the shouting, Yang Chendong kept his guitar and walked down the stage with a big smile. He returned to his table. His 4th brother, Yang Yang, who had been sitting there all this while, was already blushing. When he saw Chendong sitting down, he said, "6th brother, you're really something. Once tonight's matter is spread out, your name will be known throughout the entire capital tomorrow." Yang Chendong smiled and shook his head. This was only the beginning. He had only brought out a small portion of the things that he knew, and it had already caused a commotion in the capital. If these people were to take a look at Crimson City, wouldn't their eyeballs fall out? Yang Chendong's expression was calm, but the people in the audience seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. After listening to the 3 completely different songs, they had gradually accepted this new style of music. There were even a few people who gathered together and began to memorize the lyrics of the 3 songs. One after another, they chatted happily. Those who did such things were either people without status or people who felt that their status was not good enough. For example, the son of Duke Su, Su Qingzong, the second son of Duke Ying, Zhang De, and the grandson of Wang Ji, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Si, did not bother to do such things. Instead, they held their wine glasses and walked over to Yang Chendong's table. Those who were able to come to the 9 Art Square and become regulars here were all people who loved music. The 3 people who were shocked by the 3 songs took the initiative to walk over to Yang Chendong's table. It was not because he was a secondary class, rank 5 official at such a young age, but because they admired his talent. The 3 songs just now allowed them to understand what it meant to be a high mountain and flowing river, and what it meant to be a heavenly sound. It could be said that the appearance of the 3 songs had completely overturned their understanding of music. At this moment, they were truly impressed by Yang Chendong's talent. Walking over to him was just an act of goodwill. Naturally, Yang Chendong, who wanted to make friends with influential officials, would not let go of such an opportunity. He immediately drank and chatted merrily with the 3 people. Including 4th brother Yang Yang, there were 5 people in total. They chatted merrily, and laughter could be heard from time to time. Dong Shuai, these 3 songs of yours are truly unforgettable. It's so refreshing. Su Qingzong, who was shaking his head, said with a flushed face. That's right. Compared to the songs I've heard in the past, it's obvious who's better. I'm afraid that I'll have to suffer in the future. Zhang De, the second son of Duke Ying, had a look of pity on his face, as if he was sad that he would not be able to hear such songs in the future. Sigh, second young master Zhang, you're right. With Dong Shuai around, why would we worry about not being able to hear such beautiful songs in the future? Isn't that right? As Wang Si spoke, he winked at Yang Qindong, clearly saying that if we want to listen to songs in the future, we'll have to look for you. The 3 people here, one asking and one answering, seemed to be expressing their own opinions, but in reality, they were just testing him. Yang Qindong was well aware of this, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he went with the flow and said, in the future, if you want to listen to music, you can't look for me. No matter what, this young master is still a 5th-rank official of the imperial court. If I really do that, those imperial censors will report me to the emperor. When he mentioned the imperial censors, the 3 people's expressions changed. The hierarchy of the dynasty was very strict, and people were divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Entertainers were of a lowly background, and were looked down upon the most. Any large family would not marry a woman of this background, even if they wanted to take a concubine, not to mention that Yang Qindong was a 5th-rank official in the imperial court. Although this official position was only a low-ranking official, and he had received it after offering the potato, it was still an official. Once there was a crown prince in the future, his power would naturally be used. If he were to sing, it would be a scandal. It would be seen as a disgrace to the imperial court. If that really happened, the spittle of the imperial censor would drown the entire imperial court. When that time came, not only Yang Qindong, but the entire Yang family would be implicated. When they thought of the consequences, Su Qingzong and the others could not help but be startled, and then they all shook their heads. Seeing that the 3 of them knew the serious consequences, Yang Qindong chuckled. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that Lady Xiang was looking at him from not far away. Cui Na, who was standing beside her, had an anxious look on her face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he opened his crescent-shaped folding fan with a swish, gently fanning his elegant and handsome face. Come, drink wine, drink wine. There's wine today, so let's drink in the morning. While calling out to Su Qingzong and the others, Yang Qindong was waiting for the fish to take the bait. On one side of the stage, Lady Xiang clenched her fists. Because she was using too much strength, her slender fingers were starting to turn white. However, she did not care at all. Her gaze was fixed in the direction of Yang Qindong. She pursed her lips and did not speak. She was not as calm as before. Beside Lady Xiang, the middle-aged but still charming Cui Na, was chattering endlessly. Xiang, do you really plan to take the 6th young master as your master? Although his elder sister was also amazed by the 3 songs he played just now, he was still an official and a noble. We are just the lowest performers, and the difference in status is too great. Even if you are the famous Lady Xiang of the capital, if you want to take him as your master, I'm afraid he will not agree. You will only be asking for your own humiliation. Lady Xiang, who had already gathered some courage, clenched her fists even tighter, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes. However, in the end, she still did not take the step, as if her feet were tied to a boulder. Yang Qindong, who was sitting there drinking wine and chatting with his new friends, noticed that Lady Xiang did not come over in the end. Instead, she disappeared on the side of the stage with the help of Cui Na, the procuress. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It seems that I have overestimated Lady Xiang. She is a woman after all, and her status is still inferior. She doesn't even have the courage to ask me for advice. Originally, I planned to take her as my subordinate after I appeared today, but I have to give up for the time being. Although the plan had encountered some temporary difficulties, in Yang Qindong's view, it was not a bad thing. At least tonight, he had made a name for himself with the 3 songs. Lady Xiang might have had too many concerns, but there would eventually be bold female artists. Opportunities were always for those who were prepared. After drinking 3 more cups of wine, the sound of the watchman rang out on the street outside the Jiao Arts Workshop. 1 hour. Chapter 69. There was a night ban in the Ming Dynasty. The rules were clear. Once the drum was rung at 3:00 in the morning, no one was allowed to go out. Only after the morning bell was rung at 3:00 in the morning would the ban be lifted. Those who walked on the streets during the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th night would be flogged 50 times. Those who broke the law after the 1st night ban and before the 5th night ban would be flogged 40 times. As soon as the drum was rung, the guests in the hall began to walk out. Yang Qindong lived outside the capital, so he naturally had to be 1 step ahead. Otherwise, he would not be able to make it to the southern city gate in time. Everyone, it's time. Farewell. Yang Qindong stood up and cupped his fists at Su Qingzong and the others. Take care, Dong Shuai. Su Qingzong and the others stood up with smiles on their faces. Although they had just met, they felt regretful that they had not met sooner. If there was anything Yang Qindong gained tonight other than making a name for himself, it was probably making these 3 friends. Of course, more importantly, the news of the 3 new songs spread rapidly in the capital that night. By the next day, there were already people on the streets humming the new songs that were fresh and catchy. The tip of the peach leaf is the tip of the tip, the willow leaves hold up the sky. My dear lord, listen to me carefully. In the morning, the servant girl, Little Wire, went out to buy breakfast as usual. As soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she heard 2 scholarly young men humming this song that she had never heard before. For a moment, Little Wire felt a refreshing feeling rush into her heart. For a moment, she stood there and listened in a daze. It was not until the 2 scholars were far away that she came back to her senses. Then, with a heart full of curiosity, she went to the nearest breakfast shop. When she returned to the courtyard after buying breakfast and saw the young lady getting dressed, she absent-mindedly placed the breakfast box on the round wooden table. Then, she rested her chin on her hands and carefully recalled the song she heard in her mind. Then, she hummed softly. After snorting twice, she shook her head forcefully. Her face was filled with anxiety, as if she had lost something she loved. Little Wire, what's wrong with you? After repeated this, Little Wire was still immersed in her own world. The young Miss's voice, which was as pleasant as an oriole's, entered his ears. What are you humming? It sounds really nice. Ah. Young Miss. At this time, Xiao Wei felt as if she had just woken up from a dream, but her forehead was already covered in sweat. I heard 2 people humming this song when I went out to buy breakfast. It gave me a refreshing feeling, so I learned a few lines. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to remember it. At this moment, Xiao Wei looked as if she hated herself to the core, as if not remembering the lyrics and melody was a huge mistake. What? The young lady's expression suddenly changed. Xiao Wei, are you saying that the song you were humming just now was a new song that people on the streets were singing? Ah. Miss, is this a new song? What kind of new song is it? Why haven't I heard it before? The young miss, whose arm was being held by the maid Xiao Wei, had not yet fully put on her clothes. Under the red dress, her slender neck was undoubtedly exposed. Her soft breasts were like white jade, half covered. Her waist was tied, and a pair of slender and well-proportioned legs were exposed. Even her beautiful lotus feet were silently enchanting, as if inviting people to look at her seductively. If there were people who frequented the red light district here, they would definitely exclaim Madame Shui and call out her identity. Madame Shui's full name was Xiao Yuxue. She was one of the famous courtesans in the red light district of the capital. Together with Madame Xiang, Dong Hanxiang, they were called half of the beauties in the city. It meant that both of them were more beautiful than half of the city. If they were combined, they would be the most beautiful woman in the city. Last night, Madame Xiang was resting in the backyard of Bihua Hall because of her female physiology. Moreover, she was young and sleepy, so she did not know what had happened in Jiao Art's workshop. Naturally, she did not know about the 3 new songs. When she woke up early in the morning, she heard her maid Xiao Wei humming softly. She was attracted and wanted to ask what was going on. Of course it's a new song. You know what I do. If it's an old song, it's impossible that I haven't heard of it. Her tone was very certain. Madame Xue not only had snow-white skin, but also a beautiful voice. She was also very proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If it was an old song, she would definitely have heard of it. It's a new song. Miss, you should learn it quickly. When you sing it, more people will come to our Bihua Hall. Then, we will be able to suppress Jiao Art's workshop. Xiao Wei looked excited. Of course, whether it was because she wanted to listen to this song was unknown to outsiders. Bah! Madame Xue's red lips opened slightly. She really looked like she was exhaling. Since it's a new song, of course you haven't heard of it. If you have the time, why don't you go and find out where it came from? Oh, I'll go right away. The lively Xiao Wei agreed and rushed out of the room. When she saw Madame Xue, whose clothes were still slightly untidy, she shook her head. Xiao Wei is already 16 years old, but she still does things carelessly. I don't know who will marry her in the future. When it came to marriage, Madame Xue could not help but frown slightly. She thought of her own family background and Xiao Wei's family background. People like them did not have the right to pursue happiness. Perhaps the best ending for them was to grow old in Bihua Hall. But when she grew old, would there be a place for her here? Courtesan. It sounded like she was quite famous. But in the end, she was just eating the rice of youth. Once she grew old, her popularity would decline day by day. At that time, there would naturally be younger and more beautiful girls to replace her. After a long time, no one would remember her glory when she was young. Just like the lyrics of the later generations said, one wrong step, and you'll regret it forever. Dancers were also human. Who could she tell the pain in her heart? For the oppression of life, she swallowed her tears. Is this fate? Destined to live the rest of my life? It was because of the experience of countless predecessors that people like Madame Xue had long been prepared for it. She just wanted to earn more money while she was young. In this way, she would be able to feed herself when she grew old. The appearance of a new song was often the best opportunity. It could turn a person from a nobody to a world-famous person. At that time, there would naturally be some rich benefactors. With many followers, it would be the most glorious time of their lives. Madame Xue had a feeling that this song was so fresh and different from what she had learned before. Once she learned it, she would definitely become popular. She must learn this song. In the Hu mansion. Hu Yan got up, ate, and read as usual. Of course, the so-called reading was not the wonderful stories in Yang's newspaper, but the books on women's discipline and women's ethics that modern women must learn. As a woman, she had to marry and spend most of her life in her husband's family. How to be a good wife and take care of the family affairs for her husband was something that most women dealt with in their lives. If one wanted to do something, he naturally had to do it with his behavior. This required a woman to be educated and reasonable, and to learn the 3 obedience and 4 virtues. The so-called 3 obedience and 4 virtues were the foundation of a woman's life. The 3 obedience referred to obey the father before marriage, to obey the husband after marriage, and to obey the son after the husband's death. The 4 virtues referred to virtue, appearance, speech, and work. That is to say, as a woman, the most important thing was moral character, to be able to stand upright. Then it was appearance, meaning that one should be dignified, steady, and courteous, not frivolous and casual. Speech, meaning that when conversing with others, one should be able to casually add meaning, be able to understand what others are saying, and know what one should and shouldn't say. And the way of managing a family, the way of managing a family includes supporting one's husband and teaching one's children, respecting the old and loving the young, being diligent and thrifty, and other details of life. Not only that, there were also things like the 3 principles and 5 elements, etc. It was because of the etiquette and teachings in these so-called books that women's social status was not very high. If she married a man who liked her and was willing to share everything with her, it would be better. At least she still had the final say in the family. But if she met a man who did not know how to care for her, she would be like Yang Qi and Sister Yang, gradually becoming a servant. Hu Yan's grandfather, Hu Ming, was still alive. Although he was not young anymore, he was still healthy and was an important official in the imperial court. He was one of the 5 ministers entrusted to Xuanzong, and also held the position of Minister of Rights. Her father, Hu Changning, was the governor of the Brocade Guards and held great power. He was in his 40s and was full of vigor. With such a grandfather and father, Hu Yan did not have to worry for the time being. Even if she married into her husband's family, with such a family, she would not suffer any losses. But in the end, she still had to rely on herself. Relying on her mother's family was not a long-term solution. This required Hu Yan to be strong enough in order to live a life without worry. Naturally, things like female morality and female discipline were compulsory homework every day. Perhaps she was spoiled by her grandfather and father, but when Hu Yan read these books, she would feel sleepy. Although she had just woken up not long ago, her eyes were still listless. Her head also seemed to lack some support. From time to time, her head would fall down, but she still managed to hold on, making her look extremely adorable. Young Mississippi, Hu Yan, who was hesitating whether or not to fight 300 rounds with the Duke of Zhou, was instantly awakened by a series of screams. At that moment, the Duke of Zhou was so frightened that he ran off to who knows where. After the screams, the servant girl Xiao Qing rushed into the study, bringing with her a whirlwind. If she ran 100 meters at this speed, she should be able to barely pass. Chapter 70. Little Qing. Looking at the maidservant who was sweating profusely and was not reserved at all, Hu Yan pretended to be angry and scolded angrily with her small mouth. Don't you know what it means to be prudent and reserved? Look at you now, you don't look like a maidservant of the Hu family. You have been with me for so long, why can't you learn? Hu Yan still looked like she wanted to seize the opportunity to teach little Qing a lesson. Unexpectedly, little Qing did not listen to this at all. Instead, she looked at Hu Yan with a pair of bright black eyes and said, Miss, Dong Shuai went to the red light district last night. What? A simple sentence was enough to make Hu Yan, who wanted to pretend to be a miss, suddenly change her attitude. Her originally pouting mouth was already wide open, but then she suddenly closed it tightly and said with a voice that was close to gnashing her teeth, I didn't expect that he is also such a shameless man. Originally, she wanted to come here to take credit and also to prove that her identity as a spy lived up to her name. She did not expect that one sentence would cause the miss to misunderstand her meaning. Little Qing quickly corrected herself and said, Wrong. Dong Shuai did go to the red light district, but it was not an ordinary place of prostitution. He went to Jiao Art's workshop. Not only that, he also sang 3 songs there. I heard that each song made people feel refreshed and shocked. This time, little Qing did not dare to hold back in the slightest and said everything that she had heard in one breath. What? He knows how to sing. He knows music. At this moment, Hu Yan realized that she had misunderstood Yang Qindong. However, at this moment, she would not admit that she was wrong, because her body and mind had been attracted by a better topic. Not only does he know, I heard that one of the songs was about a tragic love story. It was about a long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Laoson's family lived next to them. They had nothing to do, and then there was a man called Little Six and a girl called Big Lotus. Little Qing also knew half of it and did not completely understand. She only heard it repeated by others. Things that passed through other people's ears were not very clear. Hu Yan was a very smart girl. She was able to make out the gist of it. He's the sixth young master. Could this little sixth be referring to him? Could that Dalian be a girl he knows in Jianghu? Does he really know how to act out a story for fun? I heard that Dong Shuai not only knows it, but he is also very good at it. After one song, even Lady Xiang, who is famous for her beauty, was ashamed. She took the initiative to give up the stage and retreated. She did not have the face to come out again. Xiaoqing thought about how she had spent some money and heard the story of the scholar who happened to be at Jiu's shop last night. She couldn't help but feel excited. Was there anything this Dong Shuai wouldn't do? Is there such a thing? Hu Yan's eyes were naturally wide open, and her face was full of joy. She felt as if she had done something great. Of course. I also heard that the top courtesan of 100 Flowers Hall, Lady Shui, who is also famous for her beauty, has rushed to Yang village in the south of the city in a sedan chair. She said that she wants to be apprenticed to a master. The more little Qing spoke, the bigger her eyes became. That was an expression of being honored, as if she was the one who had been acknowledged as a master. Hu Yan, who was listening in riddles, immediately blushed when she heard that Lady Shui was going to Yang village to be apprenticed to a master. Shameless. How can Dong Shuai accept someone like her as his disciple? If she can't go, she will just be asking for trouble. As if she had made an assertion, Hu Yan said, Dong Shuai can sing at home if he knows how to sing. Why does he have to go to Jiu Art's workshop? Isn't he afraid that the imperial censors will impeach him? As she spoke, she put her fist to her lips as if she was anxious about something. When little Qing saw this scene, she immediately laughed out loud. Miss, who are you to Dong Shuai? Why are you so anxious for him? I am him. When Hu Yan said this, she suddenly realized that she had been tricked by little Qing. Her face immediately turned red. She clenched her fist and, fiercely, chased after little Qing. For a moment, the two young women started a marathon competition in the study. In the imperial court, the officials were in a good mood today. It was probably because they saw the high-yield grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain yesterday, which solved a big problem for the development of the Great Ming Dynasty. Now, everyone was smiling. Even colleagues who were not close to each other nodded to each other when they saw each other, which was rare for them to be magnanimous. Zhu Qizhen was also in a good mood. Last night, in Empress Qian's bedroom, he was really praised. Speaking of Empress Qian, she was really well-behaved, virtuous, and gentle. She was born in Haizhou. Her father, Qian Gui, was a military commander. She was made empress in 1442. From then on, she only had one person in her eyes, Zhu Qizhen. In other people's eyes, Zhu Qizhen was Emperor Yingzong. But in Empress Qian's eyes, he was her husband, her sky. She dedicated all her love to this person. In the history of the Great Ming Dynasty, Emperor Yingzong was captured by Yes Hen during the Tumur Rebellion. In order to welcome Yingzong back to the court, she sent out all the assets in her palace. Every day, she mourned and prayed for the gods to bless Yingzong. When she was tired, she would lie down on the ground, which caused one of her legs to be disabled. She cried all day and cried until one of her eyes was blind. Later, Emperor Yingzong returned to the capital and was imprisoned in the Nangong Palace. During this period, life was difficult. Empress Qian used hand knitting to support the two of them. This lasted for 7 years. After Zhu Qizhen died, he was afraid that Empress Qian would be bullied by imperial concubine Zhou. He specially ordered Empress Qian to have the honor of being buried with me after she passed away. It could be said that Empress Qian was a model of virtue. Normally, it was very difficult to get such a person to flatter him and say a few words of praise. However, after seeing the potatoes at Yangjia village, Empress Qian acted out of character. She praised Yingzong endlessly, saying that it was because the emperor was virtuous that he was bestowed with such a high-yielding and auspicious item. She said that Yingzong should devote himself to state affairs and work hard for the prosperity of the Great Ming Dynasty. After receiving Empress Qian's praise, he was much more enthusiastic and proactive when serving the emperor in bed. This caused Zhu Qizhen to wake up in the morning with a face full of radiance. He was unable to contain his joy and was in a good mood. When the emperor's mood was good, the officials were naturally happy as well. During the morning court, the officials became much more amiable. Some of the matters that were reported seemed to have been resolved satisfactorily. Nearly 2 hours passed. Ingzong was several times more efficient than usual and dealt with several major matters in succession. When he saw that the officials were satisfied, Ingzong was also happy. Zhu Qizhen himself liked this kind of scene where everyone was happy. Wouldn't it be best for everyone to be happy? Good. The atmosphere in the court today is very good. The emperor and his officials are of one mind. Zhen is very happy. Zhu Qizhen said with a happy and satisfied expression. After saying this, he raised his right hand. This was his usual action. He was preparing to end court. Just as Wang Zhen, the head of the ceremony directorate, was about to shout, "End court," a person suddenly walked out of the room. This person had a short stature, and as soon as he left the room, he fell to his knees and said, "Your Majesty, this subject, Su Yozhen, has a memorial." This official heard that in the red light district last night, the newly appointed Crown Prince Yang Chendong sang loudly in the Nine Arts workshop. He actually dared to share the stage with an actress. This is truly a disgrace to an official. This official asks the emperor to punish him. With such a good situation, Ingzong was in a happy mood. Suddenly, a person like this appeared. Not only did he kneel down and shout, he actually criticized the crown prince who had made a great contribution yesterday, Yang Chendong. This shout caused the originally harmonious scene between the emperor and his officials to change. When all the officials looked at Su Yozhen, their faces were filled with anger. As an official of the court, going to the red light district was a disgrace. Especially when he dared to share the stage with an actress, it was a disgrace to an official. Su Yozhen was an imperial censor in the imperial censorate and was even a 7th-rank official. It wasn't wrong for him to spread rumors. However, he also needed to look at the time and situation, right? Just yesterday, the emperor had just appointed Yang Chendong as the crown prince's horse Washington. Today, he went to impeach him. What did this mean? Was he trying to say that the emperor was capricious? At this moment, not only were the officials angry, even Ingzong's face was filled with displeasure. Wang Zhen, who was standing beside him, glared fiercely at Right Capital Imperial Censor Chen Yi. His meaning was that this was his subordinate. How could he not know when to advance or retreat and be so tactless? Regarding this, Right Capital Imperial Censor Chen Yi also had an expression of being wronged. Although he was the head of the imperial censor, not all imperial censors needed his approval before they could submit a memorial. However, everyone who was on duty had this authority. They would give you face and greet you. However, there were countless cases where they didn't give you face and suddenly attacked you. It was clear that this time, Su Yozhen didn't communicate with him. Instead, she chose to reprimand him in front of the court. Most of the time, people who reprimand him would offend people. Usually, this kind of person wouldn't have a good ending in the future. After all, in the officialdom, if you respect me, I'll return you 10 feet. If you're good, I'm good, everyone will be good. However, if there were people who didn't want to be united and wanted to cause trouble, they would naturally not be tolerated by everyone. However, the imperial censors didn't belong to this category. Their original duty was to reprimand and complain about injustice. They would spread the news to the imperial court and deliver it to the emperor's ears. Therefore, in terms of duty, Su Yozhen's actions weren't wrong. Not only that, the emperor couldn't kill him. Not killing the imperial censors was originally set by Ming dynasty's first ancestor, Zhu Yuanzhang. Although Ingzong wasn't happy with Su Yozhen's actions, he couldn't do anything. He could only retract his right hand that he was about to raise. He then looked at the officials and asked, "Let's discuss this. How should we handle this matter?" Chapter 71. He said handle, not deal. This in itself was a clear indication of Ing Zong's attitude. He'd only been promoted yesterday because he'd offered up a potato. If Yang Qindong hadn't been so young, a minor 5th-rank position would have been a bit too light. Zhu Qizhen had just said that when the immortal abode opened for business, he would attend if he had the time. This was a disguised form of compensation. All of the officials were well aware of this, but none of them objected. After all, this was what Yang Qindong deserved. But it had only been a day. No. It hadn't even been 24 hours yet. Yet someone was already impeaching Yang Qindong. How was this a memorial? This was clearly a slap to the emperor's face. As the saying went, if the lord was humiliated, the subject would die. All of the officials knew that they had an obligation and a responsibility to absolve Yang Qindong today. Otherwise, if they judged others by their own standards, wouldn't it be possible for them to be rewarded one day and taken back the next? Regardless of whether the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold, or whether officials would protect each other, the officials had no choice but to stand in Yang Qindong's shoes. However, before the officials could think of a way to express their stance, another person stepped forward. When he stepped forward with his ceremonial tablet in hand, the officials knew something was wrong. Some of them even revealed anxious expressions. Reporting to Your Majesty, this subject Yu Qian agrees with Governor Su's request. As an official of the court, he should strictly abide by the law. However, not only did he wander around the brothels, he even dared to sing on the same stage as an entertainer. This is truly a loss of face for us court officials. Your Majesty, please issue an edict to punish him. As he spoke, the proud left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian, knelt on the ground and bowed. Yu Qian, courtesy name Tingyi, was from Qiantang. He had studied diligently since his youth and had lofty ambitions. He admired Wen Tianxiang's integrity and had kept Wen Tianxiang's image at his side for decades. This Yu Qian was not the great master who smoked, permed his hair and drank wine, but he was actually one of the loyal and famous ministers of the Ming dynasty. He attached importance to reputation and integrity, to fame and fortune. When he died, his family did not have any wealth left. He attached importance to dying for a benevolent cause, to death. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, he fought to the death in Walla without retreating. He attached importance to the country, to the emperor. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, when we elected Zhu Qiyu as the emperor, we claimed that we were doing it for the sake of the country, not for our own personal interests. Yu Qian was so strong that even Wang Jun couldn't do anything to him. He was one of the few officials who made Steward Wang feel helpless. At this moment, he stood out and supported Su Yozhen, making the situation even more complicated and serious. This subject has a different opinion. The Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, stepped forward, as if he was afraid that there would be other officials who would agree with him. Zhu Qizhen, who was frowning, suddenly heard an official say that he had a different opinion. He was startled and said, "Speak." Your Majesty, although the Nine Arts Workshop is in the red light district, it is not a place where one can seek pleasure. It can be considered a pure land. Yang Shima going there isn't a violation of the rules. Wang Zhua spoke first, separating the Nine Arts Workshop from the red light district. This was his excuse. Secondly, of the 6 arts of a gentleman, there is the word music. Yang Shima created Yang Bao and his many talents have long been known to the world. It is nothing much for him to sing a few songs. On the contrary, this subject feels that this is because he understands the affairs of the people and can show the style of a minister. A minister is omnipotent and knows everything. Thirdly, Yang Shima is still young and has just entered the capital. It is inevitable that he would be attracted by the prosperity here and do some inappropriate things. This is completely understandable. With these 3 points, this subject pleads for Your Majesty to be merciful and not punish Yang Shima to show Your Majesty's magnanimity. After speaking, Wang Zhua kowtowed to the ground and shouted, "Long live the Emperor," before kowtowing again. The moment Wang Zhua stepped forward, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhi, stepped forward as well. This morning, his grandson, Wang Si, came forward to pay his respects. Kneeling on the ground, he recounted the events that happened at the Nine Arts workshop in detail. Using his own words, if not for his provocation, young Chendong wouldn't have gone on stage to sing, and there wouldn't have been any trouble. If the censors were to impeach him, he hoped that his grandfather would speak up for him. Otherwise, if young Chendong were to be punished, as an accomplice, he wouldn't be in a good position either. After hearing the story, Wang Ji was infuriated. This grandson of his was good at everything. He was hardworking in his studies and diligent in his work. However, he loved to be in the limelight too much, and he loved to wander around those red light districts. He had already brought up this matter more than once. Yet, not only was his grandson unrepentant, he even caused a huge commotion. As the royal court was about to start, Wang Ji didn't have the time to reprimand his grandson. He only wanted to talk about it after he returned from the royal court. However, he didn't expect that someone would still use this as an excuse. Seeing that the emperor and the officials had the same attitude, Wang Ji hesitated for a moment before stepping forward to speak up for young Chendong. Your Majesty, this subject believes that Lord Wang's words are appropriate. Who hasn't been young and frivolous? Furthermore, Yang Shima's song has nothing to do with the political situation. Please give him a chance on account of his contributions. After Wang Ji finished speaking, he picked up his ceremonial tablet and knelt on the ground with a plop. Even though Yang Shima's actions sound ridiculous, it is just a joke among the young. This subject believes that there is no need to discuss it in the royal court. This old subject hopes that your Majesty won't pay too much attention to it. The Minister of Rights, Hu Kuang, also slowly knelt on the ground. As the Minister of Rights, even he believed that Yang Chendong's actions didn't violate the rules of etiquette. Naturally, others couldn't say anything. Including Hu Kuang, there were 3 important officials speaking up for Yang Chendong. With these 3 officials at the front, the other officials all knelt on the ground and voiced their agreement. Even Wang Zhen, who was standing next to the emperor, took this opportunity to whisper to Zhu Qizhen, Your Majesty, Yang Shima's actions aren't harmful at all, so there is no need to pursue this matter. Your Majesty can have him open a restaurant and do business, so what's the big deal about singing a few songs? Your Majesty is completely free to make your own decisions. In addition, the imperial censor's words should also be rewarded, and this matter can be settled. The immortal abode was about to open, and Wang Zhen had a 10% stake in it. Who knew how much more income they would get in that month? If something were to happen now, the immortal abode would definitely be implicated. This was tantamount to harming their own interests, so they naturally had to speak up. With the officials pleading for leniency and Wang Zhen's words, Yingzong understood what was going on. After lightly rubbing his forehead, he spoke in a clear voice. This subject's words are reasonable. Yang Shima is merely young and restless, and he has just arrived in the capital. Everything is new to him, so it is reasonable for him to do something that is slightly out of line. There is no need to pursue this matter any further. As for Supervisor Su, he is diligent and responsible in his work. He will be rewarded and promoted to the position of supervisor of the Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience. The Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience was a 6th-rank official. Compared to his previous 7th-rank official position, it was a 2-rank promotion. This could be considered an explanation for this person's actions. The officials were immediately overjoyed, all of them cheering for the emperor's wisdom. Just when everyone thought that the matter had been resolved and all the officials were about to stand up, who would have thought that the newly promoted imperial censor Su Yozhen would continue to kowtow to the ground and ask, Your Majesty, if Yang Shima continues to sing songs in the future, can you make an exception and not pursue this matter? His Majesty has already promoted you, but you still want to bite on this matter and not let it go. This means that you don't know how to do things, you don't know how to conduct yourself. For a moment, some of the officials looked at him with stern eyes. The feeling that Su Yozhen gave them before was not like this. This person was smooth and slick and very good at dealing with people. Transferring him to the Imperial Censorate was just a way to gain experience and accumulate experience. But why was this person so stubborn today? Did he want to provoke the Emperor's displeasure? At this moment, Ingzong was indeed a little angry. Seeing that Su Yozhen still wanted to hold on to this matter and not let it go, he loudly reprimanded. Jin said, Yang Shima is young and restless, and he is multi-talented. Yang Shima's story was his doing. Since writing a story can be accepted by everyone, so what if he sings a song? In the future, there is no need to report such matters. If you have the time, why don't you observe the suffering of the common people and see if the officials are doing their best? It was clear that Ingzong had a problem with the imperial censorate. Right, Imperial Censorate Chen Yi lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. Feeling that Ingzong's anger was not good, the other officials naturally did not dare to say anything. Only Su Yozhen, who did not know where he got the courage, actually knelt on the ground and shouted, this official knows. In the future, if there is anything related to Yang Shima, it will not be reported. Humph. Ingzong also angrily glared at Su Yozhen. Then, without waiting for Wang Zhen to call for the court to end, he got up and left the dragon throne. The officials also left with the emperor. Even Right Imperial Censorate Chen Yi did not pay attention to Su Yozhen, who was still kneeling on the ground, and left with the other officials. Soon, there were only 2 people left in the entire court. One was the kneeling Su Yozhen, and the other was the left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian. Official Su, quickly get up. The emperor and the officials have all left. Reaching out his hand to help Su Yozhen up, Yu Qian's face was filled with admiration. Yu Qian was upright and plain-spoken. Even with Wang Zhen's power, he did not lower his head, and the other party could not do anything to him. It was very difficult to make such a person admire others. But now, Su Yozhen did it. Being helped up by Yu Qian, Su Yozhen was flattered. Official Yu, many thanks, many thanks. Official Su, there is no need to be like this. I should be the one thanking you. Imperial censors should be like Official Su, not fearing power, and report to the emperor. Even if the person you are referring to has made a great contribution, it is still the same. When he said these words, Yu Qian's words were righteous, and his face was solemn. Not only did he say this, in fact, he had always done things this way. However, he did not notice that at this moment, Su Yozhen's face was filled with shame. Only he himself knew why he would do such a thing today. His heart was far from being as pure and holy as Yu Qian seemed. On the contrary, it was extremely dirty. It was just that it was not enough for people to understand. Official Yu is too modest, too modest. Drenched in cold sweat, Su Yozhen was afraid that he would unknowingly give himself away if he stayed, so he cupped his fists and bid farewell. Yu Qian was left standing alone in the court, his gaze seemingly piercing through the imperial city, piercing through the capital, and reaching the Yang clan manor in the southern part of the city. Yang Chendong, Yang Chendong, first you made a report to control the direction of public opinion, and then you made such a ruckus the moment you arrived in the capital. Just what are you thinking? Are you an official or a merchant? Are you loyal or treacherous? Chapter 72. Yesterday could be said to be a busy day. In the morning, Yang Chendong first beat 7th brother-in-law Wang Go, then beat the drum of the imperial court, went to the imperial court, saw the emperor, and presented him with the auspicious and high-yielding potato. In the afternoon, he saw his eldest brother, second brother, and the others, whom he had not seen for a long time. In the evening, he went to the red light district, 9 arts workshop, and made 3 astonishing songs. After returning to the Yang family manor, Yang Chendong fell asleep immediately. It was not until the sun was high in the sky that he got out of bed with the help of his maid Xiao Yin. It wasn't that Yang Chendong insisted on using Xiao Yin's help. For this matter, he had refused many times. Until one day, Xiao Yin cried in front of him and asked if the young master didn't want her anymore. This caused Yang Chendong to have no choice but to give in. It had to be said that the men of this era were very fortunate. After tidying up properly, the kitchen maid Yi Qiu had already prepared breakfast on the round table. As he ate in big bites, he listened to Tiger's Mane, who was standing beside him, report the matters of today's imperial court. Young master, after Su Yozhen received our money, she indeed went to court today to impeach you. After that, the officials pleaded for leniency. The emperor also said that in the future, there is no need to report anything related to you. Tiger's mane widened his eyes and looked at Yang Chendong with a gaze full of admiration. His reverence was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. Just last night, when he left the Nine Arts workshop, Yang Chendong handed the task to Tiger's mane. He had someone bring enough money to find an imperial censor called Su Yozhen. Then, he did the same thing. When he first received the task, Tiger's mane was naturally very puzzled. He couldn't understand what the young master was trying to do. Spending money to hire someone to impeach him? Was he crazy? However, after a long period of training, his nature of obedience had been cultivated. In the end, he still did as he was told. Sure enough, after finding Su Yozhen's house, he snuck into the courtyard and took out 2,000 taels of silver. That person's eyes lit up, and he only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. This led to today's morning court session. All of this seemed to be because someone was jealous of Yang Chendong's rise in power. Everyone followed this train of thought. Who would have thought that this was just a self-written and self-directed play by the sixth young master? Taking advantage of the fact that he had just offered up an auspicious item, there would certainly be no result if someone tried to impeach him. The ministers were thinking about dying if the lips were cold and the teeth were cold. The emperor was thinking about his own face. All of this was calculated by Yang Chendong, so he took this risk. The benefits of taking the risk were obvious. In the future, no one in the imperial court would bring up this matter again. In this way, he could openly be a rich man, a true official businessman, a person who was recognized by everyone as rich. Everyone knew that he had money, so when he did things, it would naturally be much smoother, and he would have fewer worries. As for why he used Su Yozhen and not someone else, this was the advantage of Yang Chendong's prophetic ability. Su Yozhen had a short stature and an ordinary appearance, but he was very intelligent. He liked fame and was good at reading people's expressions. In history, when Mingyingzong was restored, he had made a great contribution. Later on, he became an important minister with great power. During this time, he had also engaged in open and secret struggles with Shi Hang and Chao Jixiang within the ruling class. This kind of person clearly had some ability, and he valued benefits. He also had the identity of an imperial censor. If he didn't use him, wouldn't it be a waste? The ancients had long said that it was better to offend a gentleman than a villain. Based on this principle, Yang Chendong interacted with a gentleman based on the principle of respect. Towards villains, he used benefits to pull them together. In this way, he could take care of all aspects and eliminate many dangers invisibly. Naturally, people like Su Yozhen should be used well. If he really had talent, he would be given the opportunity to show it. But when it came to sincere friendship, it was far from enough. Not bad. After listening to Tiger's mane's report of the situation, Yang Chendong smiled with satisfaction. Your people in the security bureau have worked hard. Reward the relevant personnel with 100 taels of silver. As the bureau chief, you can deal with it as you see fit. Rewards should be given for meritorious service. This was a principle that Yang Chendong deeply remembered. Only then would more people be willing to work for you and do things with peace of mind. Thank you, young master. Tiger's mane said with slight excitement. 100 taels of silver was naturally nothing to the security bureau, which spent money like water. What was important was Yang Chendong's satisfaction with their work. This was what they pursued. By the way, young master, a sedan chair has arrived outside the Yang family manor. One of the ladies even handed over a name card. Where's the name card? Yang Chendong asked as he put the last bite of breakfast into his mouth and clapped his hands. That is with Qiao Yin. Tiger's mane lowered his head, not daring to look at Yang Chendong. Hee hee. Yang Chendong smiled, then got up and went to the study next door. Sure enough, there was a name card neatly placed on the wooden table with beautiful words written on it. Xiao Yin was very sensible. She wouldn't make things difficult for Yang Chendong on important matters. She just wanted to throw a tantrum and let people know that she knew some things, and even some things that she didn't like. Yang Chendong also saw this as another kind of beauty for girls, the beauty of jealousy. He knew that this was Xiao Yin's way of reminding him not to get too close to the lady who came to see him. He smiled and took the name card. The name of the name card was, for the 6th young master Yang Chendong. When he opened it, a fragrant smell immediately assailed his nostrils. There was also a line of beautiful words written on it. Your servant, Xiao Yushua, greets the 6th young master Yang Chendong. Please don't refuse. Jun Yushua. Yang Chendong took the name card and walked out of the study to Tiger's Mane, who had a respectful expression on his face. Knowing that this was a question for him, Tiger's Mane thought for a moment before the identity of this person popped up in his mind. Young master, Xiao Yushua is Lady Shue's name. Oh, so it's Lady Shue. Hee, she's smart. By the way, is Lady Xiang here yet? Yang Chendong recalled Dong Hanxiang's struggling expression last night. No. Tiger's Mane shook his head and scolded Lady Xiang in his heart for not being sensible enough. The young master Yang Chendong personally went to your 9 arts workshop and sang 3 songs. You don't know how to take advantage of such an opportunity? It really makes one speechless. Yang Chendong's face clearly flashed with a hint of loneliness. It was unknown whether he was feeling pity for Lady Xiang or lamenting the outdated views of people nowadays. Forget it. Since Lady Shue came in person, I'll just meet her. If she's a talent, I'm willing to teach the young master Yang Chendong a few things. This is Lady Xiang's fortune, Tiger's Mane said enviously when he heard that this lady could be taught by the young master Yang Chendong in person. As the Yang family system expanded, the chances of being taught by the 6th young master Yang Chendong in person became fewer and fewer. Whenever there was an opportunity, everyone would try their best to seize it. How about this? Inform the people to enter the manor. Also, find Xiao Yin and arrange for someone to send out the things I prepared when I returned last night. Remember, don't miss out on a single family. Send out all the gifts to the manors of the 5th rank officials in the capital. Also, don't miss out on the families of my brothers and sisters. Yang Chendong didn't want to offend people by sending out gifts. That wouldn't be worth it. Yes. Tiger's Mane naturally knew about this and immediately agreed. However, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked hesitant. What's wrong? Is there something else? Yang Chendong knew that Tiger's Mane had something to ask, so he looked at him curiously. That. Our people from the Bureau of Security have found out that someone is asking around about the young master's past. Tiger's Mane had just said this when he felt the atmosphere in the room become oppressive. He saw Yang Chendong's expression become extremely solemn, even a little cold. Who is it? The young master. It's not just anyone. It's Hu Yan, the granddaughter of the Minister of Rights, Hu Yan, the daughter of the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Changning. This is some information on her. Tiger's Mane took out a small book from his bosom and turned to leave. This matter wasn't about someone worrying about the 6th young master's safety. It was highly likely that it was about the love between a man and a woman. Even though he was the young master's subordinate, he couldn't interfere in this matter. It's actually a woman? Yang Chendong was also a little dizzy from this sudden turn of events. When he looked at the small book, it recorded in detail about Hu Yan. It also emphasized that this woman was already 16 years old. However, until now, no one had discovered that someone had gone to bring her forward. After an investigation by the Bureau of Security, they found out that it was Hu Changning's idea. The small book also recorded that Hu Yan was educated and well-mannered. Moreover, she was as beautiful as a fairy. She was also clever and cute. Looking at this, how could Yang Chendong not know what this meant? At this moment, the matter of Hu Zhangning breaking into the Yang family's old house in Fang Jianing Mansion was naturally figured out in an instant. At this moment, Yang Chendong understood that Hu Jiangming's worship of his parents at that time was fake, and his observation of himself was real. The daughter of the Hu family seems to come from a good background. Yang Chendong thought and smiled. No wonder Tiger's man reported the situation to him after being pestered like this. He must have known the importance of this matter. To be honest, if the Bureau of Security hadn't found out that someone was investigating the sixth young master this time, they naturally wouldn't have noticed Hu Yan, and the following things wouldn't have happened. Well, it's better to let nature take its course when it comes to love. After reading the small book, Yang Chendong put it in a small cabinet in the study. For him, it was still too early to talk about love. How to successfully lay a good foundation was the most important thing. In the side hall of the Yang family's manor, Madame Shui was sitting with the servant girl Xiao Wei. Even though he was seated, he still had a nervous expression on his face. His face was flushed red, making him look even more enchanting. Chapter 73. Seeing Xiao Yushua's nervousness, Xiao Wei tried to cheer her up. "Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. You can relax. Many childs and young master from noble families have spent money to go to Baihua Hall just to see you. The sixth young master is also a man. He must be the same as them." "No. It's not the same," Madame Shui retorted. "You've read the wonderful stories in Yang's Daily. And the song you hummed today, the touching love story. How can the person who wrote these things be the same as the other young master? It's not the same." Before they met, Yang Chendong had become a great figure in Madame Shui's heart. It was no wonder that she could not keep calm and was so nervous. Xiao Wei saw that Xiao Yushua seemed to be possessed, so she wanted to comfort her. But at this moment, footsteps came from outside the room. Then Yang Chendong, dressed in cyan, walked into the side hall accompanied by the maid Xiao Yin. He looked indifferent, and his chin was slightly raised at a 45-degree angle. His chiseled face, especially the confident smile on his face, seemed to have a magic power that deeply attracted Madame Shui and Xiao Wei's eyes. Xiao Yin also noticed the two women's behavior and immediately raised her head proudly. In her eyes, the sixth young master was undoubtedly the most perfect man. It was reasonable for other women to look at her young master in this way. While they were looking at Yang Chendong, he was also looking at the two women. In particular, Madame Shui gave him a feeling of déjà vu. Upon closer inspection, he realized that this woman actually had the shadow of Su Qing, an actress from the future. Especially the two shallow dimples on her face, which made her look even more similar. She had a face similar to Su Qing's. Her skin was as white as snow, but she was younger in age. She also had an enchanting temperament. Men who saw her would not only be aroused, but would also have a very primitive behavior. Fortunately, Yang Chendong's self-control was strong enough to suppress the moment his body reacted. Then, he revealed an extremely charming male smile and sat down at the head of the table. He opened the crescent-shaped folding fan in his hand and gently fanned it, looking like an elegant and handsome young master. It was not until Yang Chendong found a chair and sat down that Madame Shui woke up. Thinking of her performance just now, she couldn't help but blush. Then she bent down and said, "Dong Hanshua greets Dong Shui. Please get up." Yang Chendong smiled and stretched out his hand to support Madame Snow. Madame Snow took the opportunity to stand up. Then the sixth young master said with a smile, "I've long heard that Madame Shui is known as half the beauty of the city and is proficient in the beauty of melody. I wonder if I have the honor of listening to the sound from outer space?" Yang Chendong's words made Madame Snow feel relieved. She was most afraid that he would say something about his identity. If so, she, who was originally a lowly person, didn't know how to know. Now that he took the initiative to talk about music, she was very happy. In that case, I'll make a fool of myself. Madame Snow didn't dare to refuse Yang Chendong's request, not to mention that she had taken the initiative to ask for his help today. She had to be more humble. Madame Snow agreed softly. Then she bowed and said to her maid Xiao Wei, "Prepare the guzheng." Xiao Wei was capable and agile. She quickly placed the guzheng she brought with her in the side hall. Madame Snow walked slowly to the guzheng and sat down. She looked up at Yang Chendong and smiled charmingly. Then her slender fingers fell on the guzheng and gently plucked the strings. "You love me, I love you, 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 I love you." The poem, Locking the South Branch and Molding Clay Figurines, was written by Zhao Mengfu's wife, Guan Sheng, a master of calligraphy and painting in the early Yuan dynasty. The background story was that when Zhao Mengfu was 50 years old, he wanted to imitate the famous scholars at that time to take a concubine, but he was too embarrassed to tell his wife. His wife knew and wrote this poem. After reading My Love poem, Zhao Mengfu was deeply moved and never mentioned taking a concubine again. When Madame Snow sang this song, it had a special charm. It really showed the love of a wife to her husband. For a moment, Qiao Yin, who was standing aside, was mesmerized. There were even tears in her eyes. At this moment, she seemed to see the feeling she should have when her husband married a concubine in the near future. However, Yang Chendong was not asked at all. This had something to do with the fact that he was not used to these greasy songs. At the same time, it was also because he was busy staring at Madame Snow's towering breasts. It had been 3 years since he came to this world. Although he did not get close to women on the grounds that he was still growing, and he did not even have sex with the beautiful Qiao Yin, it did not mean that he did not need it. It was just that there were too many things to do and too much energy to think about it for the time being. Today, there was no one else in the room except himself and the 3 beautiful girls. The budding of youth was somewhat uncontrollable. In particular, Madame Snow's figure was so beautiful and her skin was so white. He could not help but stare at her breasts a few more times. Madame Snow spent all day in the red light district and had seen all kinds of men. Among them, there were many men who would stare at her figure endlessly. Some of them even had very bold gazes. She felt that those men were more vulgar. Sometimes, she would feel a little embarrassed and even a little disgusted. However, today, facing the 6th young master's gaze, not only did she not feel disgusted, but she also felt a little proud, and a little happy and secretly happy. Why was she not angry, but happy? Was it because there was some kind of attraction to the 6th young master that made her not blame him at all? Or was it because she knew that he was a talented man and wanted to get close to him? Madame Snow did not know what she was thinking at the moment. However, Yang Chendong hurriedly withdrew his expression after hearing the song. At the same time, he deliberately straightened his body and used the corner of his eye to observe Qiao Yin, who was standing next to him. Fortunately, Qiao Yin had listened to the song and was completely immersed in it. She did not notice that she had lost her composure just now. Relieved, he smiled at Madame Snow, as if only she and he knew what had happened just now. He coughed softly and said, "Madame Snow's voice is really like the sound of nature, intoxicating. You flatter me, Dong Shuai. I really made a fool of myself. I heard that yesterday in the Jiao Arts workshop, Dong Shuai shocked the world with 3 songs. That was the sound of nature. Now, the streets and alleys of the capital are talking about it." While being modest, Madame Snow secretly pointed out what had happened last night. She also took the opportunity to tell Yang Chendong that she had come here for the 3 songs. It's just a casual composition. How can it be the sound of nature? Yang Chendong shook his head and did not admit that the song yesterday was exquisite and wonderful. Madame Snow was a little anxious when she saw that Yang Chendong had denied this matter. She thought that the 6th young master was rejecting her, so she said, "Dong Shuai, I did this for the new song. Since this morning, when I heard the new song on the street, I was intoxicated and could not control myself. I sent a letter to you. Please don't refuse. As long as you are willing to teach me the new song, you can tell me any request or condition. I will do my best to satisfy you." When she said the word satisfy, Madame Snow's face was so delicate that it looked like water could be squeezed out of it. Seeing this, Yang Chendong was also very tempted. If Qiao Yin and Xiao Wei were not present, he was afraid that he would not be able to control his body. Well, only one of the 3 songs is suitable for Madame Snow. No matter how good the song is, it has to be suitable for the person. Yang Chendong forced himself to suppress the thoughts in his heart and said with a smile, "It's just one song. That's better than nothing. As long as you can sing one song, I think the business of 100 Flowers Hall will be good." Madame Snow was a little disappointed when she heard Yang Chendong's answer, but she quickly thought it through. She was not related to the Dong Shuai, and it was already a great favor that he was willing to teach her a song. How could she dare to ask for more? Madame Snow accepted the reality in her heart. She bowed again and said, "Please teach me, Dong Shuai." Seeing that Madame Snow was thirsty for a song, Yang Chendong did not put on airs. Instead, he said to Qiao Yin, "Bring me the guitar hanging in young master's bedroom." Qiao Yin had long wanted to hear young master's new song, so she agreed and left. Soon, she returned with the guitar and handed it to Yang Chendong. Madame Snow was very curious when she saw the instrument that looked like a pipa. It was the first time she had seen such a thing in her life. She wondered if it was the instrument in the Dong Shuai's hands. While she was thinking, the guitar was gently played, and a pleasant sound came out. Then, Yang Chendong's unique baritone voice slowly rang out. "The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, the willow leaf is holding up the sky. In its place, Lord Ming, listen to me carefully." The words were compact and there were no superfluous words, nor was there any decadent tone. It was just talking about the most ordinary thing. However, the unique melody made people unable to help but like it. In fact, at the beginning of the 3rd time, the 3 women could not help but hum along with it. Yang Chendong's pronunciation was very clear. Compared to last night at the 9 Arts workshop, he sang more seriously. The 3 girls naturally listened to him very clearly. By the 5th time, Madame Snow had mastered most of the song with her unique ability to understand music. Except for some parts that were not very accurate, she had mastered 70% to 80% of the song. Chapter 74. Not bad, Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction after listening to Madame Shui's song. He had to admit that this woman was really talented in this aspect. Being praised by Yang Chendong, Madame Shui was happy and shy at the same time. She was also very happy because she could meet immortal Dong Shui and learn a new song. What he did next made Madame Shui even more excited and her heart beat faster. "Madame Shui, you seem to like playing the zither. I'll teach you a new song. It's played with the zither. What do you think?" "Ah. Thank you so much, Dong Shui." Hearing that she was lucky enough to hear the second song, Madame Snow was so excited that she kept bowing with her hands folded in front of her. "Well, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to be so polite." Yang Chendong was tired of watching Madame Shui say, "Thank you," a dozen times, so he waved his hand and said casually. But this sentence made Madame Shui blush. The fact that there were no outsiders here obviously made her think the wrong way. As Yang Chendong spoke, he had already arrived in front of the guzheng. Then, he leaned over and plucked the strings twice. In the end, he shook his head. With his level, he could barely play the guitar. He really couldn't play the guzheng. Fortunately, the tune of the next song was not complicated. Given Madame Shui's ability to understand it, it would not be a problem for her to learn it after he sang it softly. "How about this? I'll sing softly, and you'll compose the music. What do you think?" Yang Chendong didn't say that he didn't know how to play the zither. Madame Shui was more than happy to sing with Yang Chendong. But she was worried that she couldn't play it well, so she asked nervously and excitedly, Can I? If I say you can, you can. If you can't, you can. Yang Chendong laughed heartily and agreed. Then, he held the folding fan in his hand and paced back and forth. His lips slowly opened and closed as he sang, "When will the bright moon appear?" With a cup of wine in my hand, I asked the clear sky. I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. I want to ride the wind and return home, but I'm afraid it's too cold at the top of the Jade Palace. When I dance, it's like dancing in the shadows. It's not like being in the human world. A water melody of Su Shur of the Song dynasty slowly appeared. It was just an ancient poem, but after being processed by Yang Chendong, it became a very light and unique song. Once this song was played, it immediately gave people a refreshing feeling. It made people feel more intimate, and at the same time, they also experienced a different kind of beautiful music. Yang Chendong sang softly, and Madame Shui began to play the guzheng with encouragement in her eyes. In the beginning, they didn't cooperate well because they weren't familiar with each other. But after a while, they had a tacit understanding. When the song was played together, it really gave people a feeling that this song should only exist in the heavens and could only be heard a few times in the human world. After singing softly for 2 more times, Yang Chendong stopped talking and let Madame Shui do everything. Madame Shui talked and sang by herself. Her charms soon surpassed Yang Chendong's and was far above his. The song made Xiao Yin and Xiao Wei feel very emotional. Why didn't they think of making this song into a song before? At this moment, their gazes towards Yang Chendong were filled with worship and reverence. Hu Mansion. Suddenly, a horse carriage drove in from the side door, and a burly man jumped down from the carriage. He looked at the Hu clan's gatekeeper and said, "This is an invitation card from my family's lord." The gatekeeper stepped forward and respectfully picked it up. When he saw the words, "Crown Prince washes his horse, Yang Chendong," written on it, he understood. After knowing the other party's identity, he smiled and said, "What can I do for you, Lord Yang?" "It's like this. My lord has developed a new kind of soft paper called toilet paper, which is prepared for the nobles after they go to the toilet." As he spoke, the burly man held 2 bags of things in his hands and handed them to the gatekeeper. "One is for Minister Hu, and the other is for Lord Hu. Please accept it." After putting down the bags, the burly man left. If Hu Zhangning was here right now, he would definitely recognize him as the Beta Persei who had fought with his 2 subordinates in Jianghu Mansion and won. The same scene didn't only appear in front of the Hu Mansion, but also in front of all 5th-rank officials in the capital. In the end, Tiger's Mane led the team to deliver the toilet paper to the Imperial Palace. The difference was that the Imperial Palace received a larger proportion, 10 large bags. The other officials only received 1 bag, while the 2 5th-rank officials in the Hu family naturally received 2 bags. Everyone who received Yang Chendong's gift accepted it. Even Yu Qian, the Ministry of War's attendant who called himself Wen Tianxiang, received a gift. For the family, this was something that rarely happened. The reason why Yu Qian accepted the gift was because he wanted to see what the Crown Prince washes his horse was up to. What was he up to? However, when he saw that the gift was actually toilet paper used after he went to the toilet, he was stunned speechless. This thing was indeed very soft, and was naturally an excellent item for cleansing the body. However, giving this kind of thing was somewhat lacking in the grandeur of a refined scholar. Thinking that this thing probably wasn't worth much, Yu Qian left it here and didn't return it, which made his wife overjoyed. Hu Mansion. The gatekeeper took the 2 bags of toilet paper to the backyard and met with Hu Zhangning's wife. Hu Zhangning's wife, Hu Yushi, was already old and no longer managed the backyard. The Hu family didn't split up, but Hu Zhangning's wife was in charge of the backyard. Madame Hu's surname was Wang, and she was known as Hu Wangshi. When she saw the 2 large bags of toilet paper, she blushed. After she figured out what they were for, she was even more speechless. This 6th young master was also messing around. How could such a thing be so publicly delivered to the residents and even handed to the gatekeeper? Scholars loved face. Although eating, drinking, and going to the toilet was a long-term emotion that no one could avoid, it wasn't good to give such things so publicly. However, since it was already delivered, it wasn't good to return it. Thus, she ordered people to prepare to send the things to the backyard's warehouse. As for whether it was useful or not, she, a woman, couldn't personally try it out due to her face. However, before the item could be sent out, the sound of hurried panting and panicked running could be heard. The person who came was Hu Yan. She heard the maid, Xiao Qing, say that the sixth young master sent someone to send a gift. She was overjoyed and ran over to take a look. "Mother, the East Marshal sent something to our residence?" As soon as she entered the hall, Hu Yan's beautiful voice, which was like an oriole's, sounded before she could stand firm. "Yan, slow down. Don't fall again. You're almost a big girl. Why are you still so careless?" Seeing that it was her daughter who came, Hu Wangshe couldn't help but say coquettishly, "Mother, where are the things that the East Marshal sent us?" Hu Yan didn't listen to her mother's nagging, but asked anxiously. "That's it." Knowing that if she didn't answer, her daughter would continue to ask, Hu Wangshe simply pointed to the 2 bags of things on the ground that were about to be put into the warehouse. "Ah!" Hu Yan first exclaimed, then walked in front of the 2 bags and casually picked one up to take a closer look. However, it seemed that this wasn't enough. She directly opened the other bag, pulled it out, and rubbed it in her hands. Seeing Hu Yan's actions, Hu Wangshe's face turned red and said, "Yan, what are you doing?" But what? What is this thing? It feels so weak. Is it used to write big words? It doesn't seem right." Even though Hu Yan thought that she was smart, when she saw the toilet paper for the first time, she still couldn't see its use. "Yan, come here." Hu Wangshe, who had always been educated to be well-mannered, felt that some words were too shameful to say. She pulled her daughter in front of her and then whispered something in her ear. "Ah!" Hu Yan's face changed. First, she blushed, then she spat softly and said in a voice that only she could hear, "How shameless of you to give me such things." "Yan, what did you say?" Hu Wangshe obviously didn't hear clearly. "Nothing." Hu Yan panicked and said, "I just said that this thing looks soft and seems to be suitable for that. How about this, I'll take it away first. If it's useful, I'll send it back to you." After saying that, without waiting for Hu Wangshe's agreement, she and little Qing each carried a bag of toilet paper, turned around, and ran out. "Hey, slow down, slow down." Hu Wangshe didn't care about the 2 bags of toilet paper. She didn't know its use at all. She was just worried that her daughter would run too fast and fall down. This was like a small episode in her life. Hu Wangshe didn't care at all. Not only that, many officials who received the toilet paper didn't care too much. It wasn't until the next day when they went to the imperial court that they realized how precious the toilet paper was. In the side hall of the Yang Manor, Madame Shui learned 2 new songs, Exploring Qingshui River and Wishing We Last Forever. She was very happy. After singing it a few times and receiving Yang Qindong's affirmation, she was overjoyed. "Thank you for teaching me, Dong Shui. But I don't know if these 2 new songs can be sung in Baihua Hall," Madame Shui said carefully when she was talking. She was afraid that Yang Qindong wouldn't agree. "No problem. You can sing them if you want." Yang Qindong smiled. It always took a process for a new song to be accepted by the world. Baihua Hall could expand its influence. Why not? As for the copyright of the new songs, Yang Qindong didn't care at all. He didn't know how many songs like this there were. If it weren't for the fact that the lyrics and music of these 2 songs were clean and suitable for zither and pipa, he could teach more. Seeing that Yang Qindong agreed, Madame Shui was overjoyed. Chapter 75. Yang Qindong did not stop her. Although he could not be Lady Shui's master, he had still taught her, so it was only right for her to bow to him. After bowing, she saw that it was noon and knew that Dong Shuai was probably going to eat. Not daring to disturb him, she happily left the Yang clan manor with her maid Xiao Wei. Not long after they left, news came from the capital. Tonight, the 100 Flowers Hall of the Red Light District would be performing 2 new songs. They would only be sung once, so there were not many chances, so please make good use of them. The moment this news came out, many young masters who believed themselves to be elegant began to make arrangements with the young master to attend 100 Flowers Hall that night. Putting aside how lively the city had become, in the Yang clan manor, as Xiao Yin ate the delicious food that Yi Qiuer had made, she softly asked Yang Chendong, "Young master, didn't you say that you wanted to take Lady Shui and Lady Xiang for your own use? You said that they were both talents, so why didn't you say a single word about them?" Yang Chendong ate the food in his mouth as he shook his head and said, "Haste makes waste. If I act now, it will inevitably make people think that this young master is taking advantage of the situation. Let's wait. Fortunately, there is still time." Yang Chendong naturally had his own plans. Not saying it now did not mean that he would not say it in the future. It was just that the time was not right. He understood the principle of more haste, less speed. Although with his current status, it was not impossible for him to forcefully take her away. However, if he did so, it would inevitably give others a reason to criticize him. He was afraid that his reputation of bullying women would be tarnished. This was not something that he wanted to see. In comparison, Yang Chendong preferred the feeling of success when the conditions were right. But before that, he still had many other things to do. For example, there was one thing that he needed Xiao Yin to do. "Yin, how about the young master arrange something for you?" Upon hearing that there was something to do, Xiao Yin hurriedly put down her bowl and chopsticks, an excited look on her face. "What is it?" "It's not difficult. I just want Yin, to make a trip to the capital and find some children between the ages of 14 and 18. Both men and women are fine. 50 of each. They must have good looks, good figures, and must be as tall as possible. Then, we will hire all of them, sign a 3-year contract, and bring them back to the manor." Yang Chendong also put down his bowl and chopsticks, thinking of another plan, and said with a smile. Yang Chendong was about to start looking for the Immortal Abode's attendants. A total of 100 people were prepared. Among them, the men were waiters, all wearing black jackets. The women were waitresses, all wearing black cheongsams. This was the uniform that was put on. This would give you a very shocking first impression. However, it wasn't enough for them to merely be dressed in the same way. They also needed to be consistent in their pace and actions. In addition, they also needed to have a deep understanding of the Immortal Abode's range of experience. If a guest were to ask them about something they didn't understand, they would know how to explain it and what to do next. The matter of the clothes was easy to resolve. Long before he left Crimson City, the head of the garment factory, Zhou Hua, had already made the clothes according to his request. Now, they were all in the Yang family village. However, it took a lot of time to develop their physical qualities. For this reason, when Yang Chendong handed the task to Xiao Yin, he especially emphasized, "Don't be afraid of spending money. As long as someone is willing to work for us, we will give them 2 taels of silver per month. However, you must also tell them that those who can endure hardship and can read are priority. If someone can't take it and wants to leave, not only will they not receive a single cent, they will also have to pay us to make up for their losses." Yang Chendong didn't really want their money. With Crimson City as their base of operations, Gao Xiong and the others had already taken control of the entire region of the sea. Anyone who wanted to pass by would either have their goods stolen, or would have to pay an extremely heavy price before being allowed to pass. This caused a large amount of money to flow in from the sea. Yang Chendong didn't lack money. Not to mention, once the Immortal Abode opened for business, it would definitely make a lot of money. 2 taels of silver per person per month really wasn't much. Of course, this so-called not much also depended on who it was compared to. Ordinary citizens, especially children in their teens, would definitely have very few opportunities to earn that much money. In fact, they might not even have the chance to do so. Yang Chendong only had Xiao Yin do this because he understood the situation. Yang Chendong also believed that with Xiao Yin's personality, she would definitely do a good job. Moreover, anyone who could catch her eye shouldn't be too bad. After all, she had followed him for such a long time. She didn't have much else, but when it came to experience, few people could compare to her. After sending Xiao Yin out of the Yang clan manor, he arranged for Qiu Vi and Yang Wu to protect her. At the same time, Qiu Vi and a group of guards also left the manor. With his reputation as Yang Chendong, the chances of anything happening were extremely low. Zhi Chendong turned around and entered his study. His figure flickered as he reappeared in the large warehouse. As soon as he entered the warehouse, Yang Chendong headed for the club. There was a television and a video player there, as well as the complete Yi Zhong Tian analysis of the Three Kingdoms. He had come here to study. He wanted to make a Yang Chendong analysis of the Three Kingdoms. It took Yang Chendong 4 hours to come out of the study room. When the sun was about to set, Yang Chendong walked out. He saw Tiger's mane waiting for him. The young master's study couldn't be entered unless there was something important. Moreover, when entering, one had to first pull on the doorbell, a so-called drawstring device. Once one pulled on the doorbell, one would be able to hear the sound from the inside. Only after obtaining permission could one enter. This was Yang Chendong's requirement for everyone around him. Even Xiao Yin and Tiger's mane weren't allowed to break this rule. This was also a habit that Yang Chendong had instilled in everyone. This way, when he needed to enter the large warehouse, he didn't have to worry about someone suddenly appearing outside to disturb him. When he saw Tiger's mane waiting for him outside with a calm expression, he knew that there was nothing urgent. As Yang Chendong walked over, he asked Tiger's mane, "Has everything been taken care of?" "It's been taken care of. All the fifth-rank officials in the capital, including the Duke's estates, Marquis estates, Count's estates, and even the Imperial Palace, have been sent over according to the number that was previously agreed upon," Tiger's mane respectfully replied. "Very good. Is there anyone who doesn't accept them?" "There isn't." Tiger's mane pondered for a moment. Indeed, there wasn't any news of anyone confiscating toilet paper. Thus, he nodded affirmatively and said, "They've all accepted them." Not bad. This answer was somewhat out of Yang Chendong's expectations. He originally thought that there would be independent people like Yu Qian who wouldn't accept gifts. He didn't expect them to accept all of them. It seemed like they thought that toilet paper wasn't worth much, which was why they accepted it so easily. Since that was the case, he would give them a heavy blow later on. He wanted them to understand that toilet paper wasn't a piece of white paper. It was an existence that was much more valuable than that. Do we have enough toilet paper in the warehouse?" "It's sufficient. It's definitely enough to deal with the capital. Also, Crimson City is speeding up. The first batch of goods is already on its way to the capital. Wang Zhen has also sent someone over to deliver the Eastern Faction Depot's pass token. It can guarantee that the goods will be able to pass through without any obstructions." Tiger's mane explained the matter of the Eastern Faction Depot's pass token. Hee. Upon hearing this, Yang Chendong chuckled and said, "That Wang Zhen is a smart person. He knows that it's hard to get anything back without any effort. This is good. It'll save us a lot of trouble." "Yes. With the Eastern Faction Depot's pass, our goods will be safer along the way. It will also save us a lot of trouble. We can also save a lot of filial piety along the way," Tiger's mane said excitedly. "No." Yang Chendong stretched out his index finger and said, "We still have to pay the necessary filial piety along the way. You must know that in many cases, a county official isn't as good as a local official. There's no need to make enemies and trouble just to save some money." Seeing how certain Yang Chendong was, Tiger's mane's expression turned cold and he said, "Yes, Tiger's mane will remember it. I'll instruct them later." By the way, young Master Four sent an invitation. He said that there will be a new song at 100 Flowers Hall tonight. He invited young Master Four to go with him. No need. I still have to make all kinds of drinks with the cook, Choer, tonight. I won't be going to 100 Flowers Hall. But you have to send someone to keep an eye on the situation there and report back to this young Master Four. Yang Qindong shook his head. Although he also wanted to see Madame Snow's elegance, there were too many things that he needed to do. He had to do everything himself. When things were on the right track, he could relax a little. Yes. Tiger's mane replied and went to arrange things. Yang Qindong strode toward the kitchen in the backyard. Xiao Yin hadn't returned yet, so he seized the time to go to the kitchen. Otherwise, when she came back, it was inevitable that she would warn him to stay away from the kitchen. The red light district of the capital. At this moment, 100 Flowers Hall was packed with people. Even though there was still an hour before the start of the competition, the place was already filled with people. For example, Su Qingzong, Zhang De, Wang Si, and the others who had appeared at the Nine Arts Workshop yesterday were also here. Furthermore, they were seated closer to the stage. They were all regulars of Nine Arts Workshop and had a rather special status there. But after listening to Yang Qindong's 3 new songs yesterday, their attitudes had changed. They had naturally lost interest in the songs that they had heard countless times before. Hearing that there was a new song in the 100 Flowers Hall, and that it was sent back by Madame Xue after she went to the Yangzhe village during the day, how could she hold back? She immediately ordered the servants at home to book a table here. They weren't the only ones. The news of Nine Arts Workshop's new song had already spread throughout the capital. It was said that this matter had even been called to the morning court. Even the emperor knew of this matter. Once this matter was hyped up, everyone naturally knew about it. Countless people naturally came because of the fame, and for a moment, 100 Flowers Hall was packed to the brim. Chapter 76. Not only that, some round tables, which could only seat 4 or 5 people, were now filled with 7 or 8 people. Although it was a little crowded, it proved that there was a lively scene here. Mu Lily, the procuress, was a famous courtesan in the capital when she was young. Now she was in charge of the business of Biyao Hall. Although she was less than 30 years old, she was still very charming. When she saw the scene today, she couldn't stop smiling. Well, let's get busy. Don't neglect the guests. This is a good opportunity for our Biyao Hall to become famous. Mu Lily's eyes were almost narrowed into slits. She walked in the hall and greeted the guests warmly. She was afraid that she would be impolite and cause trouble because there were too many people. However, Mu Lily obviously thought too much. Today, everyone was here for the new song. At least, before they heard the new song, no one would casually cause trouble. This also made it so that although the number of people in the hall was several times more than usual, the order was not disrupted. After the performance, Madame Xue was still practicing. After all, she had only sung during the day. It was indeed a little hasty for her to perform at night. Moreover, there were so many guests today. What if she screwed up? What would she do? Wouldn't those nobles tear down 100 Flowers Hall? She had been on the stage many times, but she didn't know why she was so nervous today. She remembered that when she went on the stage for the first time, she was as nervous as she was now. Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. Although I have just learned this song, other than Dong Shui, no one else knows what the original song is like. On the other hand, Xiao Wei was thinking of ways to comfort her young miss. Xiao Wei's words made sense, but Madame Xue still shook her head stubbornly. No, I have to live up to Dong Shui's trust. By the way, Xiao Wei, is Dong Shui here tonight? Xiao Wei wanted to lie to her miss, who was full of expectation. However, she knew that she could not lie to her miss when she went on the stage. She shook her head reluctantly. Dong Shui didn't come. He didn't come? Obviously, Madame Xue was somewhat disappointed. Judging from the way Dong Shui looked at her during the day, he should still like her. At the very least, he admired her. If that was the case, why couldn't he come to 100 Flowers Hall today when he could go to 9 Arts Workshop yesterday? Seeing that her young miss was in low spirits, Xiao Wei was afraid that something bad would happen. She quickly added, I've sent someone to check. Dong Shuai didn't go to Jiao Arts Workshop today. Perhaps this was the only good news. At least it proved that Yang Chendong was not biased. I see. Sure enough, Madame Snow's expression became much better after hearing that. As a woman in the entertainment field, perhaps her competitive nature was stronger. When she heard that Dong Shuai didn't go anywhere, her mood became much better. The guests at the front desk did not know what was going on backstage, nor did they know that the heart of their goddess, who had always wanted to get close to her, had already flown out of the venue and was no longer with the guests. Time passed little by little, and it was getting closer and closer to the start of the show. The geisha, who was warming up the scene, had already gone up the stage. However, both the performers and the audience were obviously absent-minded. They were all waiting for the 2 new songs to come on the stage. Finally, Madame Snow, who was dressed in white, went up the stage accompanied by her maid, Xiao Wei, accompanied by a burst of enthusiastic applause. Of course, no one knew whether it was a farewell applause. Lady Shue's clothes were as white as snow, and her skin was white and tender. Her skin was as clean as a baby's. Coupled with her graceful figure, she received a wave of applause as soon as she stepped onto the stage. The applause went on for a long time until Madame Snow sat down on the guzheng. At that moment, the whole venue became very quiet. In the silence, under the eager eyes of the audience, the sound of the guzheng rang softly, accompanied by Madame Snow's pleasant monologue. A long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Lao San and his family lived next to it. They had nothing to do. The monologue was to let more people know the story so that they could understand the main idea of the song. It was also specially requested by Yang Chendong. At least, the monologue was still needed before the song became a hit. When people became familiar with the song, the monologue could be skipped at any time. The monologue made people's expressions change again and again. From the monologue, they seemed to have seen the tragic ending of the young couple who loved each other. In the corner of the hall, a handsome scholar with a white face was listening to the monologue with tears in his eyes. Beside her, there was a handsome attendant accompanying her. However, she seemed to have forgotten her role, which was to look after the young master. At this moment, her eyes were also filled with tears. She was like a dam that was about to burst, and the rain could pour down at any time. Little Qing, how do you think he came up with such a tragic story? Is Little Six really referring to himself? Did he really have such an unforgettable love when he was young? The seated young master gently wiped away the tears that were about to flow out and asked the attendant standing beside him. Little, master, I don't know. The attendant shook her head and said in a choked voice. In the hall, many people were moved and affected by the story, but none of them shed tears like the 2 girls. The situation here was naturally noticed by the diners at the surrounding tables. Some people naturally looked over. Lower your head. Noticing that some people were looking at her table, the young master quickly lowered her head, and so did the attendant who accompanied her. The 2 girls reacted quickly. In addition, the place was a little remote and the light was dim, so the others could not see what was going on. Then, they all turned back to the stage. Sensing that other people were not looking at them, the master and the attendant looked up and made faces at each other. It was also at this moment that their mischievous nature was revealed. If Lord Hu Zhangning was here, he would definitely be shocked to discover that these 2 so-called young masters and errand boys were actually his precious daughter, Hu Yan, and her personal maid, Xiao Qing. They came here naturally because they heard that Baihua Hall was going to sing a new song at night. They also knew that Madame Shui had just returned from Yangjia village during the day, which made them even more curious. After some discussion, they decided to come here in person to see what Madame Shui looked like. Let's see if this new song is really as good as the rumors outside say, that it can really make people unforgettable, and has the effect of making people feel relaxed and happy. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, and the willow leaf is holding up the sky. Lord Ming in his position, listened to me carefully. After the narration, the song officially began. With Madame Shui's beautiful voice, a refreshing song entered people's ears, which made people feel comfortable and comfortable. Unlike Yang Qindong's voice, Madame Shui's voice seemed to be sadder. Even Su Qingzong, Zhang De, Wang Si, and Yang Yang had the same feeling. There was a beginning and an end. When the song came to an end, there was silence in the field at first. Then, there was an earth-shattering applause. It seemed to form a heat wave, which was about to melt Madame Shui on the platform. "Thank you." Seeing the effect, Madame Shui stood up and said, "Greetings to everyone." Then she slowly sat down and put her slender fingers on the zither. The tune of "Wishing People Forever" began to reverberate in the Hall of Blossoms. People were first attracted by the clean tone of the song. Before long, Madame Shui's beautiful voice rang out. "When will the moon be bright?" With a cup of wine in my hand, I asked the sky. "I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace." Jiao Arts Workshop. It was not as lively as yesterday. In fact, it was even quieter than before. Although Madame Shui's name had been hung outside the Jiao Arts Workshop today, and it did attract some young master and child masters, their status could not be compared with that of the guests in Biyao Hall. On the stage, Madame Shui just sang 2 old songs and then left with a sad face. As soon as she went backstage, Cui Na, the procuress, came up to her and said, "Sister Hanxiang, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have stopped you from going to Dong Shui yesterday." "No, Sister Cui, it's not your fault. I thought too much. I've decided to go to Yang Village tomorrow. No matter what, I'll ask Dong Shui to teach me 2 songs." Madame Shui looked very determined and confident. She regretted it when she learned that Madame Shui had gone to Yang Village during the day. Then the news came out that Madame Snow had learned 2 new songs and had gotten Dong Shui's permission to sing them in public for the first time in the 100 Flowers Hall that night. She regretted it even more. Yang Qindong was the first to come to Jiao Arts Workshop, so she had the advantage. However, she did not seize the opportunity and gave all the benefits to others. How could Madame Shui, who still had the title of courtesan, accept this? Whether it was to fight back or for the future business of Jiao Arts Workshop, she needed to see Dong Shui again. She wanted to humbly ask for advice and restore her prestige. The curfew was about to start. A large number of people in Biyao Hall began to leave and go their separate ways. In the crowd, 2 young masters, Hu Yan and Little Qing, who were dressed as young masters, were hurriedly walking in the direction of the Hu mansion. They had come out in disguise this time. If their grandfather, father, and mother found out, it would be a scandal. The dignified young mistress of the Hu family went to the red light district and went to Biyao Hall to listen to songs. Once such a shocking matter was spread out, the Hu family would definitely be criticized for not having a good upbringing. Even if Hu Yan could find a suitable marriage, it would be hard to say. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.